Here we go.
In 5, 4, 3.
Call to me, lands far away.
Elves have forests to protect.
We need to build a wall.
Dwarfs their mines. Men their fields of grain. But we Harfoots have each other.
For I must now wander this wandering day.
We're safe.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel.
No.
Put up your sword.
The enemy is still out there. The question now is where?
It is over.
Nothing is over! Nothing! You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
Darkness will march over the face of the earth. It will be the end, not just of our people, but all peoples.
Everyone! I am sorry, but their time has come.
The past is with us all. The past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it.
This could be the beginning of a new era.
Away I must wander this wandering day.
To him finally being lionized in the prime and his prime. Fuck.
Do it!
Shit.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be yesterday you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Luke went from being, oh no. Welcome, Slayer Nation. I have some great news for you today. I hope you're all doing great. Nope, that didn't work. One more.
You have failed me for the last time.
Welcome, Slayer Nation. I hope.
If you're tired of starting over, stop giving up.
That is eating away at what you love in order for it to shine. And one man's vision is... Sometimes you don't have to make things better for them to be great again. You merely have to Okay. Hollywood continues to slow boil the culture and crazy. Well, right now, Spider-Man actor Andrew Garfield has stepped up and he's fighting motherfucker.
I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live! Fuck it!
And unbearded dwarves, but Prime didn't stop there. They stapled in intersectionality, individuality, biddiga-dig-bee, biddiga-dig-boo.
So it begins. At my signal, unleash hell.
George the Giant Slayer.
What's going on, everybody? We are back, and I'm coming to you from Texas. I'm your host, George Molho, and this is Slayer Nation Live. You know, I got my feet in a bucket of ice because I'm melting today. But it's great to see you. We got people packing into the chat. Today we have an amazing show for you. We've brought a lot of your favorites back to the panel, and we also have a very special guest. You know, the last few weeks, you can call them nothing but crazy. I mean, whether it's in entertainment, but especially in politics. I mean, I've heard since I was a kid that every election is do or die. It's this, or there's not going to be anything left. Now, a lot of times I think that's tragic because it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. No one really believes it anymore. But this cycle, American Showdown 2024, this is it. This is a fight for the soul of the nation, and success means survival. So whether you're talking about Kamala Harris and her pick of Tim Walz, as known as Tampon 10, or you're talking about Trump's policies, it comes down to you, and it's time to step up, and we're going to cover it all. So are you ready? Well, get your engine started and let's get rolling. I'm going to bring out the panel and then we'll meet our guest. We have for you Gothix, the one and only. She is a fighter for free expression and freedom. She's been highlighting how the moral decay has been corrupting America. We also have blockbuster star Black Hawk Down from Rambo and Coronation Street, Matthew Marsden, and the Viking of Vision himself, Andre from Midnight's Edge, and Verbal Riot. His spicy takes on truth are like none other. How are you doing, my friends?
Very good, thank you.
Wonderful. Now, I want to introduce you all someone who really doesn't need any introduction. He's our featured guest today. I want you to put your hands together and give a big Slayer Nation welcome to a powerhouse of common sense in a crazy times, an architect of insight in a chaotic world. This is a truth teller whose no-nonsense takes cuts through all the noise. Let's welcome the unshakable, the unstoppable king of real talk, Anton Daniels.
Thank you, man. You have the greatest intros that I've ever heard in my entire life. Is this normal?
Yeah.
I feel so special.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad to have you here. I know a lot of people have seen you. You've been around for over 10 years on YouTube. You have multiple channels.
Yep, absolutely.
But I think a lot of people also, you caught a lot of attention. I know you were on Dr. Phil, but it was the Fox News. I mean, you caught fire with that. People were talking about it. And I don't know how many have seen that clip, so I'm going to share it real quick. Mike, do you have that one queued up? Or, oh, there we go. Let's watch this for a second. We got it? We got it? Okay, here we go.
Stacy on the right, Sirius XM Patriot Radio, and Anton Daniels, YouTuber and content creator. Anton, let's start with you. You just went viral for an exchange that you had with a Kamala supporter. Let's watch.
Would you vote for?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm gonna just be real honest with this. She's a Black woman.
Is it only because she's a Black woman?
Yeah.
Do you not see how that's a bad idea?
Elaborate.
We're in 3 proxy wars. She failed at the border. She has no policy, no record to stand on.
Okay, Anton, first of all, I think I forwarded that to 20 of my friends. That was such an awesome takedown. But tell us about that.
So did that shock you when you heard that, Anton?
Not really, because it's not the first time that I went viral. It's the first time that I went viral about something that I've said political. So it didn't shock me per se, simply because, you know, if you do this long enough, you'll have some viral clips. It shocked me that it made it all the way to Fox News. So yeah, a little bit, but not as much.
Well, what I meant, did it shock you, her reply, when you asked? Oh, it didn't.
No, because that's normal. That's normal within our culture and our community, as far as Black culture and Black community. And let me preface this by saying that I don't align with people that identify or make decisions based off of something that we can't control. You can't control whether you were born a man or a woman. You can't control whether or not you're black or whatever it is that you want to identify as. And so I'm always a champion for, you know, what it is that I believe in: Christianity, you know, America, all of those things, closed borders. And so it's really about policy principles and what it is that, you know, your foundation, what makes your life better and what enables you to be able to provide for your family more effectively. And I align with people based off of character. So when that conversation happens, it's the same thing that I've been hearing my entire life, as far as people making a decision on what they're going to do based off of identity politics versus, and it's a learned behavior. It's something that is taught to the black community. And I'm sure the overwhelming majority of the people that have been raised in black households have been taught to vote a certain way just because, or to align with somebody just because they are black, or because they're a Democrat, or this narrative that's always been spewed to us that Democrats are for the poor and Republicans are for the rich. So this is not new. This is something that I'm familiar with. The only surprising part about it is that with all of this information and insight and understanding, and once you get towards a certain age, at least 25, 26, 27 years old, you're supposed to start to think for yourself and then make informed decisions based off of life experiences, because you're no longer under your mother and your father's covering. So it's a lot easier to divest yourself from just that way of thinking and going into a space to where you start to have real life experiences and saying, okay, wait a minute, inflation is affecting me. If I live in any kind of sanctuary city, I'm familiar with all of these migrants that's running around that's illegal. So you're supposed to start making informed decisions and start to mature and look at policy. But it doesn't surprise me based off of my experiences of what we are used to seeing in the black community as far as what's being taught to us. So I've always been looked at as a leper or an outcast because I never aligned with what people told me. And I've always questioned what people were saying that I was supposed to do just because I was black.
So you thought for yourself. That's basically what you're like. I'm a critical thinker. I know how to make my own choices.
But that's looked down upon, because then you're breaking code.
It's code. Yeah, it's interesting because we had Gothix shared something that I think was interesting. You shared this the other day. Blackness is a religion. Pass it on.
Yeah. Some people think I'm referring to a color, but a color holds no value. It's literally something that you're born with. So my whole idea behind it is like, some people, well, a lot of people in the black community, they put blackness as like the center of their identity, and they think they're all of their morals and their worldview derives from that specific identity. But then when you ask, okay, what does that consist of? Oh, it's just a collective agreed upon moral foundation. So basically you're just doing what everyone else is doing and just going with the flow. And yeah, I don't see that really prevalent in any other community of people. It's something that's, I feel it's more prominent within black culture for some reason. And I agree. I grew up Democrat just because everyone in my household was Democrat, but I never stopped to wonder, why the hell am I voting in this particular way? It makes no sense.
Right. So you think, is it something that's programmed?
Oh yeah. And I think an aspect of it is some people are products of their environment, and with the black community in particular, a lot of people put this idea of the black card at such a high regard, and no one wants to lose that black card because then you lose your friends. You know, as Anton said, if you study, if you do a good job, that's considered acting white. You know, it's not a black thing. And so there's sort of like this incentive to just glorify just bad behavior, in a sense. You know, like that is a social norm of what it means to be black. At least that's what I gather when I hear people talk about like blackness. It's never anything productive.
But how is that any different than, it's like someone's trying to keep a group down? I mean, that's what you would do if you wanted to. I want to control the black community. In order to do that, I want to keep them down under my thumb. That's what I'm hearing. It's like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's the point.
Right. And this election, one of the saddest things I think about this election is like other elections, it's turned from policies into a popularity contest and now into identity politics. And what I think Anton said a couple of weeks ago, plantation politics.
Well, what election hasn't played into identity politics? And let me add a little bit more context as far as keeping people down, right? If you're really like familiar with what's happened historically in our lifetime alone, Let's just forget about what happened prior to us. Let's say that you're 60 and below, right? And if you're really paying attention, and you can say, okay, well, civil rights movement was then hijacked by the feminist movement, which was then hijacked by the alphabet community movement, which is now being hijacked by immigration, right? And so when you're saying to keep people down, a lot of times what it does, and what I like to explain to people, the difference fundamentally from a C student's perspective between the Republican and Democrat Party is that the Democrat Party, in a sense, kind of gives you a fish in order to keep you tied to them. It's the reason why you've seen them promise you student loans forgiveness, even though it came out of our tax dollars. It's the reason why they incentivize you and continue to give you social services instead of saying, hey, we need to tie you back to the family. And so what they did was they incentivized different people to break up their households in order to tie them to the Democrat plantation, like you just said. And then you then become loyal to that thing, even though they don't enable you to be able to, you know, get yourself out of it. And so they give you a fish, whereas the Republican Party, and no party is supposed to give you anything outside of opportunity to be able to really grasp and achieve the American dream, which is why we want smaller government, right? Which is why we want to have and protect our own borders, which is why we want better infrastructure, and we don't want unvetted illegal immigrants inside of our country. And so the difference is that Republicans give you ability to be able to fish for yourself, whereas Democrats essentially tie you to the party and they have a sense of loyalty. I talked to somebody that was a part of the alphabet community before, and they said that all of their friends in DC is by default voting blue because they have this fear within their head that the Democratic Party is the ones that champion them and give them their rights to be able to do what they want to do, versus actually doing the research to understand what it means to be a Democrat in the first place.
Right. And it seems like we see this kind of a breakdown, and the panel, jump in when you want. We see this breakdown not only in America, but all over the world. I mean, in the UK, the riots that are going on, Matthew, I mean, you've seen everything that Tommy Robinson is going through, and the UK, the children who were killed at the Taylor Swift concert and everything that followed. It seems everything keeps getting labeled, you know, far right. Anytime people start thinking for themselves, it's like, oh, far right. Anytime people love their country, up, far right.
Yeah, I mean, what I find incredible, and because when I first came to America, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back, I'm going to look at the history of America and educate myself on what happened in history, which is really, really important. And I did it independently, which means I wasn't indoctrinated by the school system that tried to make, all I can see right now is making minorities victims. I think affirmative action is despicable. I think it's completely racist. You know, you're turning around to a group of people and saying, oh, you are not good enough to achieve these standards. I mean, I know I'm speaking to the converted on this panel, you know, because everyone's got where they've got because they said, hey, listen, I'm good enough and I'm going to make a point myself. But I think if you look across at the UK, which has a very different history to the United States, the same thing is happening right now. Right. So when I was growing up, Gen X, look, there's always going to be racism. I said this before. There's always going to be some kind of an ism. You know, if you have a big nose, someone's going to make fun of you for having a big nose, whatever it might be. And when I was growing up, so my grandfather was from Southern Ireland. He was a Catholic from Southern Ireland. Now, if anyone knows anything about the history of the UK, Great Britain was actually, or England was at war with the IRA, right? It was at war with Catholics. So when I was growing up, my grandfather used to get a bunch of abuse, right? Because he was Irish and he was Catholic. Now that's got nothing to do with race, right? He's a white guy. He's grown up there and he's getting abuse. And at that point, they were at war. So as a Gen Xer, I think that I had a little bit of a different approach to the way that people see race or you know, certainly culture, because really it's about culture at the end of the day, certainly in the UK, because what has happened now is you've got a whole generation of people who've been told that even though they're super successful, that they're still victims, right? You see a bunch of people whining about being victims. And I'm like, you're making millions of dollars. Like, why are you a victim? And they're also making it about race, when actually the problems over in the UK are actually about culture/religion, right? Because if you're seeing they're talking about race riots over there, no, it's not. Like, Sikhs are very, very different to Muslims, who are very, very different to Hindus, right? And nobody wants to talk about this because for years and years and years in the UK, they failed to differentiate between Islamic terrorism and anyone else that came from that part of the world. So you're seeing a massive backlash on that. But now you're seeing a bunch of other people hop on in the same way, Anton was talking about, and Gothix was talking about, being white, being actually successful and looking after yourself and living in your life a certain way is like being white, right? Which is absolutely ridiculous. You're seeing this kind of siloing of people over in the UK based upon these, their own little individual characteristics, immutable characteristics, and they're pushing them all over, into different groups, right? So they're saying the riots that are going on are due to race. Well, actually, if you want to look, the Sikhs have been fighting Islam for years and years and years. It's not about race, right? This is about something different, but it's the left that wants to put people in these groups, so it fractures them, because then guess what? They can be controlled. So it's very interesting if you look at what's going on over in the UK and look at what's going on in America and kind of juxtapose it, because the left, while the feckless government, and then it's all to do with bad leadership, right? I mean, we all know it's to do with bad leaders, bad leadership. But if you look at the Conservatives over the past 14 years, they've been a disaster, and they've been asleep at the wheel while these other individuals have moved around and managed to silo people into their own little groups, which is what's happened here, right? It's what's happened in America for years and years and years. And like Anton said, if you're a Christian, you're a Christian, right? That is the identifying thing. It's the culture of that and the things that you believe in that unite you, right? Not the things that separate you. And they work a lot on how to separate people, because again, if you separate people, you can control them, and then what they don't want is, it's like a gazelle, right? Like you're a gazelle that leaves the pack and they all go, oh, there you go,
oh yeah, let's go.
There's lunch, so I'll go and beat them down. So the rest of the gazelles are looking and they're going, I don't want to be a part of that, so I'm going to stay in my little group, even though in their core they don't believe it. Right, they have, and by the way, it's just one more segue. When Obama won in 2008 in California, the black vote actually went against gay marriage. Right, most people don't talk about that. So there, what you have is a group of individuals that believed one way, but pretty much voted another way. Right, because although he said that he was against gay marriage and before he was for it, these are the things that are happening. So a lot of people are afraid to step out. Certainly, I've seen it in Hollywood, right? And that you better not say anything or you're going to get hammered. They're afraid of stepping out, and it takes leaders like the people on this panel to step out and go, hey, listen, you're not controlling me. These things are the least most important thing about who I am. Judge me by the content of my character. And it seems like that concept has been lost.
All right. Dr. Martin Luther King would be rolling. I would say he's rolling over in his grave today. The way that everything has turned out, especially with a heavy focus on color and color and color. It's like, it just wasn't the way I was raised. But we keep seeing this everywhere around the world.
Indeed.
Yep.
Go ahead. You unfortunately have the exact same trends all over Europe, even in countries that don't have a history of colonialism. You still have the exact same mass immigration, and you also have the exact same kind of sectarianism and division between different groups of people. That's what you have in actual reality. But then you have how the media and the local authorities in each nation, which tends to be the sister parties of the Democrats. It's always the labor parties, the global left, that are responsible for this, that basically do this divide and conquer tactic, where the entirety of the immigrant population is combined into one and victimized, and the native population is scapegoated for it, accused of being racist and all kinds of horrible people, and kind of blamed for all of the problems that you have with a failed immigration policy, even though nothing could be further from the truth. But that is still the narrative that you have all over Europe. And it's just stoking hatred and division everywhere. Now, the UK is more advanced in terms of the conflicts that we see going on right now. But the rest of Europe is just a few years behind. Some places like Sweden, partially Sweden is a failed state already. So I'm surprised you haven't got the kind of riots that you see in the UK there already, although that probably just is a matter of time. You also see some of these tendencies in France in particular, but it's pretty much the same place everywhere. These divide and conquer tactics being employed.
Yeah, well, the DEI tactics. Well, let's talk about that DEI in a moment. We've been kind of like setting the stage. So before we jump into Kamala, President Biden today gave an interview on why he bowed out. It's not like we all didn't know.
Look, the polls we had showed that it was a neck and neck race, would have been down to the wire. But what happened was a number of my Democratic colleagues in the House and Senate thought that I was going to hurt them in the races. And I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did so? And I thought it'd be a real distraction. Look.
So could you imagine that? They've disenfranchised 14 million voters. 14 million, Anton. Verbal, say it. 14 million voters. It's like we basically saw a coup. Am I wrong in that? We saw a coup before our eyes. You're not going to win. Get the hell out of the way and put Kamala up.
I just don't believe. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so I just want to say, can I add one thing to that? Well, we just saw the clip. One thing that drives me nuts, which I know is intentional, is that Trump is accused of being this massive liar. Well, from everything I have seen, Biden is 10 times the liar and lies of far more egregious things. I mean, here he even said, polls show that we were neck and neck. No, they didn't. The polls showed you had absolutely no way of winning. There was absolutely zero path to success. That's why they allegedly tried to or threatened with 25th amendmenting him if he didn't step back. I just want to throw that in there. Just don't let them get away with these lies that it was a neck and neck race, because it wasn't. Sorry, carry on, Anton.
Oh, no, I don't believe that was a play ever. I mean, I had already said and I predicted that Kamala Harris was going to be given to us in the first place. Listen, she never had a primary. We rarely ever, I don't even think that it's ever happened in my lifetime. As a matter of fact, it hasn't happened in my lifetime as a 42-year-old man, to where the incumbent wasn't the one that was the face of the Democratic Party ultimately, or of any party, ultimately to be the one that runs again in order to ensure that they maintain power in whatever legislative branch we're talking about, right? And so, honestly, the entire time that Biden has been in office, we've been looking at him with his orthopedic shoes. We've been paying attention to the fact that the Secret Service has had to make sure that he goes a certain way. He said that he was going to bed at 8 p.m. He looks like he needs his blankie. Honestly, nobody really expected Joe Biden to win this race. I never believed that the Democratic Party ever said that was going to happen in the first place. I believe in my heart, that this was always a play, that ultimately she was going to be given to us. In her last primary in 2019, she couldn't debate her way out of a wet paper bag, Kamala Harris. And ultimately, I think that this was the expectation. And so now we're getting what the play was, because there was no way that he was ever going to be Donald Trump in the first place. And so when we're talking about a DEI pick, this is exactly what the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion picks are. It is people that have not necessarily earned the position, but they get it because of their skin color, of their gender, of their race, of their ability to be able to galvanize a community based off of ignorance and not based off of policy. And I think that one of the problems with the conservative and Republican side is that we spend probably too much time on policy with people that don't care about policy. That those that want to vote a certain way and those that are informed, you don't have to galvanize them and say, hey, go and get to the polls. That is not something that Republicans is doing. They're not saying, hey, guys, let's galvanize y'all and get to the polls. But historically, ever since I was coming up, I used to look at it on 106 and Park when I was in the early 2000s. And when we used to look at all of these rappers and you see Meg Thee Stallion was jumping out there, in Atlanta, and she was twerking for votes, right? Historically, if you look at urban communities or sanctuary cities as they're now defined, as I define them, these are cities where you have a historically low voter turnout rate. And so Democrats are not going to them and saying, hey, let me show you how this benefits you. They're going and saying, you need to register and you need to get out the vote, because the expectation, as we already said in the beginning of this live stream, is if you are Black or if you are a person of color, then you're going to vote a certain way. And so Republicans and conservatives have spent a lot of time trying to educate people. Democrats spend a lot of time trying to mobilize people. And that is the difference between the two. And if you can get Biden, who obviously looked sickly in his last debate, if you can get Biden ultimately to say, oh no, we're going to galvanize, but now we're going to throw all of our support behind Kamala Harris, it's the perfect play. And it's the only way that they're able to maintain power, because there's no way that the incumbent was going to be able to beat Donald Trump in the first place.
100% agree with you. But before I go there, because I want to add something to that, we have Tom from Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark. He's joining us. Welcome, Tom.
Hello.
You know everybody, Tom.
Well, except for Anton, first time I got to meet him, but and Matthew, I don't know if we've been on a stream yet.
No.
I think we have. Yeah, so I'm actually happy to meet both of you, and I'm a proud sharer of your video, Anton. It was a great video.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you.
What I wanted to say, Anton, is 100% agree with you. I think you could see that play. You know, vice presidential picks, just the vetting process, when I was doing research on it, it takes 6 months at a minimum. I mean, they go back to high school. They try to uncover every stone. How are they going to look? They go through their speeches. And in 3 weeks, I think the only thing that I thought would be different is I thought sometime before September, October, Biden would actually step down and she would elevate to the presidency. So they can go, look, we have her, to build some type of separation from her and him and create even a more dynamic energy.
They're not as ignorant and as crazy as people think that they are. I was speaking with a couple different mayors, including the former mayor of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick. And he explained to me exactly how the political process works on the Democratic side. And they have what you call bullpens. And at the time when he was coming up and before he became mayor of Detroit, him, along with Barack Obama and several other ones, are ones that they were already preparing and vetting for what type of role they wanted them to play long-term in the Democratic Party. These things are planned years and years ahead of time. So when we think that it just so happened to be a coincidence that, oh, he lost the debate, CNN just so happened to be a lot more objective and calling it fair, right? Van Lathan is crying on the stream. And when we think that they're just so ignorant, and it even begs a bigger question, which I'm sure we can't answer today, is why did they really leave the borders open? When we start to have these type of conversations and you deep dive a little bit more, I believe it was 100% intentional, 1,000%.
But well, you see it everywhere. But the thing is I really, well, maybe it was just hope. Verbal and I talked about this last week. How come left, right, and center didn't come together and go, stop? We have to have another mini primary. We have to do something. You just can't knock out a president. I mean, you think the debate between Kamala and Trump is even going to be half as fair as it was between him and Biden? No, because they, like you just said, they had a plan. But
because I think the unspoken thing is that Kamala Harris was always meant to be a Trojan horse. She was always meant to be a Trojan horse. And I think in the back of our minds, we all understood that. And that's why no one contested it. Because we kind of already knew this. Now, you're right. We should have said something. In fact, I think we were saying things. They weren't saying anything. The Democrats were saying anything. The people that are supposed to vote for their party didn't say anything. And they just let it happen. Because it was always supposed to happen.
But it doesn't bother Democrats. See, that's the thing. I have a lot of Democrat friends, and they have been flipping out ever since this happened. They've been screaming. They've been going, what the hell is going on? I want to be able to vote for the person that is going to represent my will, my wishes.
But I think those are rare. Like, those kind of Democrats are very rare.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they're all about power. And I think that, to Anton's point from earlier on, look, when Trump came down the stairs, the escalators, right, and all the Republicans laughed, they're all laughing, who's this guy? And I turned around to my friend who was the vice president of the Claremont Institute, and I said, he's going to win. And he was like, what? And I said, you guys underestimate the power of the media. Like, it's like the Republicans just don't get it. They don't understand. To your point, Anton, is they don't understand that. They don't understand that the left mobilizes. They don't care because they don't have anything they can really run on. I mean, what
Correct.
they're doing right now is they're anti things, right? But what they understand very deeply, and you have to ask, like, why did Obama go and work at Netflix?
What was Obama's campaign slogan? It was hope.
Yes, hope.
It was hope. That's it. It was hope. Aren't you tired of what it is that we're experiencing with Bush 2, right? Which I was tired of what was going on with Bush 2. And it's hope. Hey, listen, hope for a better future. This is what would it listen, we don't have anything else to go off of except for hope. And it worked. And he was well spoken, and he knew he had a lot of charisma, which Kamala Harris doesn't, right?
Oh yeah.
And you know, he spoke the language, and he knew how to give dap at the same time, while at the same time being assertive. And it worked. It worked 100%. The entire message of the Democratic Party since we've been in existence. The same thing that we say that we're holding Trump accountable for, because now we have a segment of time that we can compare, and we can say what happened in 2016 to 2020 versus 2020 to 2024, the last 3.5 years. And you can look at his policies and, you know, North American Free Trade Agreement and supporting HBCUs and the tariffs that Biden kept in place and no new wars. And we can go in and we can, you know, mine it out. Black people don't want to hear that. Ignorant people don't want to hear any of that. The only thing that they keep saying is bad man Trump, even though the black community embraced him prior to him actually running for president of the United States of America, right? But then the same things that they're marketing him as a bad man, which I think is election interference as far as them doing all of these trumped up charges on him and stuff, right? Because he wasn't a criminal until he became president of the United States of America.
Right.
It's the exact same thing that we celebrated Clinton for. Bill Clinton was getting head in the White House by a mid chick. And he said, I did not have sex with that woman. And we called him the first black president.
Right. I remember the first black president.
We loved him for it. Right. We loved him.
The guy who played the saxophone, guitar, cool, going on. Yeah.
We loved him so much that we almost elected his wife.
And he became the first black president after the BJ incident, right? It wasn't before that.
Yeah.
It was
no, he got a blowjob in the White House and nobody gave a shit. Yeah.
The greatest thing the Democrats ever did, as far as the smartest thing they've ever did, was going back to the programming, right? Because the programming is, and this has been probably since the 60s, 70s, I can't remember. The programming is that Republicans are racist, right? As long as black people know that, they'll never vote Republican.
But how long can that work, Verbal? How long can that work?
It's working up to now.
It's going to work forever.
It's still working right now. I mean, granted, I will say this. I've seen more black Republicans now than I've ever seen in my life.
Me too.
So there are a lot of black Republicans, a lot of black people waking up, which is great, right? But not enough. Because if you go to any other forum, right, like there's a, you might not know this, George, there's a group called the Shade Room, right? Mm-hmm. And every now and then, and they usually post like hip hop things, but every now and then they'll post like something political. They'll post, and to their credit, they'll post some of the dumbest things Kamala's ever said, right? Like they'll just post her being an idiot. But if you read the comments, it's, I don't care if she's black. I don't care if she's black. I'm still voting for her because she's a black woman.
Wait a minute. I don't care if she's black, but I'm still voting for her because she's a black woman.
No. Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, even if you question her blackness, it's like, but she's brown, right?
What happened to self-interest? Self-interest. I can't pay my grocery bills, my gas bill. I can't put food on the table, trying to get a job. Everything's crumbling around me. We're in multiple wars. We got a border wide open. We're being invaded. What happened to just
That's the only thing that's working for us.
But the Republicans are racist. So that trumps all of that.
They would rather starve to death than vote for a racist.
Right.
So let me ask you guys this. Why don't they run a black Republican? Like what would happen?
Oh, because black Republicans are Uncle Toms. We're coons.
Oh.
They're agents of white supremacy. Hello.
Yeah. I've seen people literally tear down Ben Carson. Ben Carson might possibly be one of the most accomplished, intelligent black people that has been put on the forefront of advertising of what you can achieve when you put your mind to it. And I've seen people come after Ben Carson. If you coming after Ben Carson, come on.
Well, didn't they do the same thing? I just forgot his name. The gentleman who ran for governor of California against Newsom, and they called him the first.
Oh, Larry Elder.
Yeah, Larry Elder, the first black-white KKK. I was like, what the hell are you?
No, he was the blackface of white supremacy.
Blackface of white. That's right. The memes that were going on, I'm like, what the hell is going on with the left? How the hell can he? It's insane, but I think this comes down to something that Gothix talks about, which always sings to my heart. Is this education, or is this the breakdown of morality, like our foundation?
This stems from having no. This stems from the absence of God. I'm just straight up, because I get my identity from God. You don't have God, you're gonna find your identity somewhere else. And so this is the thing that I'm a little bit concerned with. Even though we're seeing a lot of Black Americans become Republican, that's not actually going to fix the problem, because the Republican Party can become just as corrupt as Democrats in a couple of years. And if you are still basing your worldview off of your skin color, then you're easily as susceptible to being swayed in one particular direction. So it's really just getting people to recognize that that's not where your worldview comes from, your skin color. It has to be something else. Otherwise, politicians are always going to exploit that. And they know that. Like, this has been going on like since after chattel slavery ended, you know, like Booker T. Washington, he wrote a book called Up From Slavery, and he even talked about this. He was like, there are still people that want to vote the opposite way of what the white man is voting for. Like, they don't even give any thought to who they're actually voting for. It's just whatever the white man's doing, want to do the opposite. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. The fact that you guys have the skin color that you guys have become public enemy number one.
Period.
100%.
And
100%. You guys are public enemy number one. You guys are it don't matter what your background is, how nice you are, the fact that you weren't alive, or you probably don't even know anybody that has participated in some of the things that you guys are being accused of. You are public enemy number one. It's just the facts.
Would that explain this? This came up the other day, and I thought at first it was a joke. I really did. Let me see if I can make this full screen so everybody can see it.
Do you know why you say the term good morning? Let's take it back to the plantation. Good morning was a term that the slave master used when the slave was unalive.
Shut up.
And the other slaves were in a state of grief when they were in a state of mourning. They were crying. They were sad. To further taunt the rest of the slaves, the slave master would say, good morning.
I mean, is this a joke, or is this actually pushed?
No, people
this is bait. This is bait.
I can't tell. How can you tell?
That's why I wanted to know. It's like I couldn't believe it, because I was reading some of the comments and they're like, this can't be real.
No one really believes that. No one. I'm sorry. Look, man, I just can't believe anyone. No black person believes that.
You'd be surprised.
I hope not, because we've been saying that in Europe since way before there even was a United States.
Yeah, but
that's like saying white teeth are racist.
Well, a month ago, Daily Mail put out the fact that it said that milk was racist because it's white.
Hey, Verbal, why did you bring up white teeth? Is it because I'm English? Is that a teethist thing? Like, what?
Oh, we got somebody else joining us, the legal himself, Joe from Good Logic. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. He's staying with Trump. Joe, meet Anton Daniels, Matthew Marsden, Gothix, Verbal, Andre Trump. We're just talking about good morning is racist.
Yes, it's very, very hardcore racist. Obviously, when they were saying it in Europe 300 years ago, 400 years ago, they were saying good morning in Germany. They were predicting that sometime in the future, their descendants would traverse over across the ocean, and then they'd want to be able to have some clever catchphrase to mock slaves who were being brutalized. Obviously, that was the plan going back centuries, and we're all now just continuing that same racist trend of recklessly throwing good morning around without recognizing how utterly harmful it is to everyone around us.
It's like
I apologize to each and every one of you for opening up with a good morning when I came in here. Obviously, I hope I didn't trigger any of it.
Good morning to you too, my friend. But so let's now get to Kamala. I mean, when you look at it, it's funny. Presidential campaigns used to be about one of the primary things. a long time ago was how you ran the campaign, kind of gave a sneak peek into how you would manage the country. And I keep seeing these people who are taking, her word salad statements. You hear them all the time.
I'm burned by what has been. Yes.
Right. Except I went and dug into it. So I want to first hear this. Everybody can hear it. And then we'll break it down for a second.
Be unburdened by what has been. You know? What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
Oh, how long is it? Oh, no fucking way. 3 minutes. I can't watch that shit for 3
You can
minutes.
add more to that now, probably.
Here's the thing. How could you watch that for 3 minutes and 58 seconds? No, but I was interested. Like, is this just this soup thing that she just spits out? No.
You have to understand, she is a very phony person, man. I don't know if you saw her the Latino thing that she did on I think it's like I was on Paulie the Latino Slant's show Friday, and he showed a clip of her appealing, or it was actually an endorsement from the Latino community, and how she's an immigrant too, and she understands what it's like to be a Mexican. And I'm like, what are you, woman? Like, are you black? Are you Indian? Are you Mexican? Like, what are you?
It's just kind of like Biden, he was a gang member. Remember when he had to whip out the chain, and he was also in Reconstruction with Woodrow Wilson. Then when FDR, he's also been a professor, a coal miner. Man,
the thing is, back in the day, let me forget, and his uncle was eaten by a cannibal.
Biden is one of the most successful politicians in history.
Yeah, do you know what's concerning to me, truly? If you cast your mind back to the election, Biden was initially like, there's no way he's ever going to win, right? Like, he's never going to win. And this woman is a complete moron. She had like less than 2% approval rate, and Tulsi Gabbard absolutely smashed her to pieces on the debate stage. I mean, it was like the two worst people. And to me, I was like, it's throwaway, right? Because Trump is clearly going to win. And then he didn't, right? So I think we're at a stage now which is really, really concerning to me, because all I have seen online, and this is a bigger issue for society, is, and everyone on this panel will know it, the lies and lies and lies and lies. And you just see it over and over on social media, lying. And now all of a sudden, whoever said that she's the greatest, Biden's the greatest president of all time, right? Now she's
greatest
a genius.
politician.
Now she's like the greatest ever, and there's so much momentum behind her. Everybody's excited. I'm like, nobody's actually excited. Like, I haven't seen anyone excited about her. I mean, they might be excited because they haven't got a cadaver to go up against Trump, right? So anything's better than that. But have you noticed that you've seen this? And this really worries me, because it used to be that if you were a liar, in the same way, guys, that if you were called a racist, and I think this is one of the good things to come out of this whole situation, is where, like, we all know now, if you're called a racist, it's basically code for, I don't like what you're saying, please be quiet, right? So now it's not, I remember, when I was growing up, if you were called that was just the worst thing you could ever be called for real reasons, right? Now people are just like, I don't care. So when you're having people call you these things, people don't care anymore about that. They're like, oh, you call me a racist, okay, you don't like what I'm saying, I don't care anymore. And I think that gives a lot of people more permission to step out, as you were saying, as people were saying before, like, you're not going to define me. But my concern is the gaslighting that's going on, which is one of the reasons why the riots are kicking off in England. The gaslighting that's going on, where everyone's going, she's a genius, she's clearly brilliant, everybody's behind her, she's amazing. By the way, have you noticed that Trump is a liar and J.D. Vance is weird? And you're sitting there going,
what?
What is going on? Like, I don't understand.
Don't tell Walls in there,
nobody's calling him on it, and very few people are calling him on it. And the mainstream media, which should be done for election interference, are just amplifying it and saying, this is true, she is brilliant, Joe Biden was amazing. That little thing about President Trump, like someone trying to assassinate him, or it wasn't really assassination because it was a blood a blood pack, and it was this. Like, they'll dismiss anything that's remotely true that comes from the right, and just continue like robots to talk, to mimic the talking points, right? Like the weird thing. Come on. I mean, I don't, someone wrote that and sent that memo out, right? Just say that they're weird. But nobody's calling them on it, or very few people with big voices apart from Elon.
Well, that's because the left has the media on their side.
Right.
It's not on the right side.
Right. But one thing right here, look at everybody right here, right now. Combined together from Twitter to Instagram to YouTube, there are 1 million+ people that you all reach, that everybody here reaches. And in old marketing terms, every person interacts with 10 people. So within a couple of days, 10 million people right now will have a chance to hear, to learn, to be inspired, to be empowered. So we can make a difference. The thing that I've looked at is what you just said, Matthew, to go off of that, the lies. I mean, we've had politicians, as long as they've been opening their mouths, they've been lying. We know that. Right? That's just reality. Except now it seems that nobody's questioning them. Like the statement that we just heard from her. Most people think it's just word salad. So I went and did digging. Do you know that it actually comes from Karl Marx, and Mao took it from him? I went and found this old New York Times article from 1971 when they actually used to report on it. And they went through, Mao actually used those unburdened by the past to unburden this, that, the other thing. And what did he use it for? One of the early objectives of the Cultural Revolution in China, which began in 1966, goes on today, was to wipe out the four olds: old things, old ideas, old customs, and old habits. And what does that mean? Religious practices was the first one. Old superstitions, old festivals, old social practices, such as traditional weddings and funerals, and the old ways of dress. Doesn't that remind you of what we're kind of going through? Tim Walt?
It's exactly what we're going through.
Yep.
And the scary thing for me, though, and I'm not that religious, to be honest with you. And it's funny, I have like seminary experience, and I turned out to be an agnostic. So.
And you were bodyguard for Prince. How do you put those together? Priest and Prince. Kind of interesting.
It was a wild ride, man. That's all I got to say. But no,
did he make you pancakes?
He never made me pancakes, and I'm still pissed about that. But, and I never got to play him in basketball either. But the thing that baffles my mind, even as an agnostic, right, is how it's completely okay to attack Christianity, right? But any other religion is untouchable, right? So try to attack Islam the same way that they attack Christianity, and you end up in jail. Right? I mean, or for tweeting something slightly Islamophobic.
Yeah.
Like that's the scarier part for me, because they know most people on the right more than likely are Christian or associate with Christianity. Right? So what they're saying is, let's jail those people. Let's attack their religion because we can. But any other religion
we're more tolerant. But we're more tolerant. We're taught to turn the other cheek. Right? We're taught to be long-suffering. We're taught to never really push back. It's one of the reasons why it's so easy for politicians. They don't do this in other cultures. They don't do this in other religions. But the first thing that they do is they go and seek endorsement from the Black church. And so what you'll start to see is a proliferation of pastors. I watched
James Clyburn. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I said I watched Fani Willis, right? Fani Willis, Fulton County District Attorney, that ultimately was the one to file all of the 91 charges down in Georgia in order to have this election interference, which then impacted and then informed other governors of trying to remove Trump from the ballot of some of these states in the first place, right? And it's so easy to do the research. And throughout the trial of Fani Willis and trying to determine whether or not she should still maintain office, it was uncovered that her and Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens wound up going to visit Kamala Harris, the vice president. It is on the logs, it is public information. Went and visited Kamala Harris prior to filing these charges against Trump in the first place, right? What we found, even though we started to uncover all of this information and evidence of how it was that she was manipulating and ultimately using her office to do some of the most egregious things, including hiring somebody that wasn't qualified to even participate within Fulton County District Attorney's office in the first place. The first thing that she did when she was up for renewal, as far as trying to get her reelected, is she went straight to the black church. And so all of the pastors and all of the people that was part of the community then rallied behind her and said that we believe in her, we trust in her, and they gave her a spot on the pulpit to make her message clear to the congregation, which generally in the black community is majority made up of women that then make emotional decisions historically that then elected her and got her back in the office in the first place. So if you want to manipulate somebody, the first thing that you have to do is understand them. When you understand that they're docile, then you can market to them more effectively. Once you market to them, you then tap into their leadership, and then ultimately you have it in your pocket. And so it's easy to go in and offend Christians because they are conditioned to believe to never push back. And that's what's taught to them through their leadership, which is also a way that was taught to us how it was that we were supposed to vote in these presidential elections.
So they weaponize kindness and tolerance, basically.
100%.
So we have another person. I think Matthew has to get going now. Thank you, Matthew, for coming. I think it's amazing. Can't wait to have you back, my friend.
Thank you.
Hope you have a blessed
having me.
Sunday.
Hey guys, thank
Absolutely.
you. Nice to meet you.
And we're welcoming the Imagineer connoisseur himself, Robert Meyer Burnett.
Thank you for having me, George. I'm happy to join this esteemed panel.
Rob, I just watched your Wolverine video, man. Very good.
Oh, thank you. I
Very
appreciate that. A lot of people are like, well, you have such a long preamble. I'm like, it's all part of the
Dude, I can listen to you read the phone book, man. You just have that kind of voice.
Robert,
right back at you, sir.
Robert meet Anton. Robert makes movies, and he's now he did Free Enterprise, Last Tango Shalom, and now he's working on an audio drama.
Last Tango Shalom. I like that.
How you doing, Robert?
He already came up with a sequel for you, Robert.
Which
I'd
we
love
had
to
to
actually-
change because the political.
One at a time. One at a time.
Sorry. Oh.
No, you guys talk. You talk. I was coming out of nowhere.
Oh, I just said we had to change the title of the movie because of events in the Middle East.
Ah,
oh wow,
that was an interesting situation. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask Anton a question because I think he was making a great point about how the black community, because they are religious and or at least far more religious. I think minorities in general. I think Latinos also tend to be more religious than white people as far as in demographics, percentages of the demographic that are certainly going to adhere to the teachings of the leaders of their faith. So my question is, how do you push back on that? I mean, seeing as how these leaders do hold that sway. So what would you recommend, Anton, as a way to actually push back on that so that the entire community or large segments of the community are not co-opted by these ridiculous teachings? Because I think that it's so transparent that Democrats don't care about black people. They don't care about them at all. That they look at them as being on their own political plantation, so to speak, in the sense that you can see that if they really cared about black people, like breaking glass ceilings and things of that nature, they would have been thrilled about Condoleezza Rice being raised up to be the first black Secretary of State. They would have been thrilled about Clarence Thomas. But when he was first nominated, instead of trying to keep him from entering the Supreme Court, but they were vicious against these individuals because their political ideologies did not align with what the Democrats want, which tells you it's not about black community or breaking ceilings or anything like that. That's all lip service. And at the end of the day, it's always about ideology, and they're just going to sell a message, even though they clearly don't believe in that message whatsoever. So my question is, how would something like that get conveyed to large? I'm asking you, really, Anton. How would large segments? How do you fight that battle that Democrats seem to have a monopoly on?
Black people today are not loyal to religion. They're loyal to their leaders.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Period. So you're saying they're no longer, because half of my friends, they always say that the religion comes first. That's why I liked what Good
It's
Lord.
a lot of people that profess themselves to be Christians, but they don't even know they never read the Bible.
Okay.
That's just a fact.
Right.
But it's a lot of people that go to church And it's a lot of people that follow religious leaders online because of their popularity. It's a difference, right? So there's a difference between people that identify. It's similar to Catholics, right? Because I went to Catholic school in middle school and I went to private school or whatever like that. And it's similar to Catholicism, right? In that there's a lot of people that identify as Catholics, but they don't necessarily show up unless it's time for mass. you see what I'm saying?
Right. So it's not daily. It's like, okay, it's like more of like, it's Sunday, time to go. Okay. Then we can go home, do whatever the hell we want.
So first we have to separate the difference between people that actually follow the doctrine, which I like to call saints, right? Because those are the people that tend to align themselves with and abide by the word of God. That's the difference. Okay. And then there's people that identify as Christians because that was the church that they was raised in, or that was the church that their grandmothers went to. And so it's a completely different mindset, and it's a mindset shift. Now, what you tend to see in the Black church today is that it's overwhelmingly made up of women. Women are highly influenced. And I would more or less say that the leaders are influencers than they are preachers and pastors.
Okay.
So it's no way that you can really push back against it, because the people that they are influencing are not there necessarily for them. It's under the guise, right? It's like putting the medicine inside of the candy. The only way that you can really push back on any ignorance within a community is you have to put the medicine inside of the candy. Marketing is just as important as the word and the message itself. So you can have the greatest product, and I say this in sales and in UX all the time. You can have the greatest product of all time, but nobody cares if they know anything about it or it's not the popular thing. But the minute that you open up a restaurant, the first thing that you need to do is you need to get an influencer in there, and you need to pay them in order to promote your product. And hopefully you can get Keith Lee in there, and then it's going to blow the restaurant up itself. It doesn't really matter what kind of product that it sells. You have to figure out how you can market it afterwards. And so what we have to figure out as people that want to educate people on how to be informed voters, which would then lead you to be, in my opinion, lead you to be more Republican or have more conservative views, because we by default are more conservative. Right? We actually want the best for our families. We want smaller government. We want lower taxes, all of these different things. The way that you have to push back is not necessarily pushing back itself, but learning how to remarket yourself more effectively to the communities that you're trying to reach.
Okay, well, then this goes out to the whole panel and Gothix, because I was just listening to her live stream the other day. Did the church leaders fail us, or did the people fail the church? Because I saw throughout the last 30 years that every time we would come up against a moral crisis or a changing in the or shifting in the culture, church leaders moved the line and they adapted it. You agree with that? Where they didn't go, here is our home, all are welcome, you believe in Christ, you whatever religion it may be. But if you believe in Christianity, they started changing the tenets of it.
Yeah, I mean, some people, well, a lot of people are incentivized to compromise with the culture. And as a leader of the church, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to lead the sheep. We are all lost sheep. So I wouldn't put blame on the people who are going to church. However, if you read your Bible, you would know that you're going astray. So there's no excuse there. But, you know, like what has already been discussed on this show, this is something that's been going back for like years. There's one book I always recommend called Color, Communism, and Common Sense. It was written by Manning Johnson, and he was recruited to be a member of the Communist Party. And he has an entire section in his book instructing how communists infiltrate the Black church. And so you see all of these supposed Black church leaders who are just espousing all of this progressive propaganda in their congregation. It has nothing to do with the Bible, but because people are, like Anton said, they're more followers of influencers than actual believers of the Word of God. It's like they're easily swayed in one particular direction. So it's really, you know, it's them. I'm going to pray for these people, but they should know better. Like if you're going to run a church, you should know better. So in my view, I think the way to push back, I agree with what Anton said, but also I think for actual believers in the body of Christ to be bold in their faith and say, no, that's wrong, and correct people.
Let me add on to that, right? So let me prove to you how influential the church is or leaders are versus people actually embracing the word of God itself. When I drive down the street, and I travel to a lot of places, first of all, Martin Luther King Boulevard in every city is always messed up. That's number one, right? Number two, when you drive down Martin Luther King Boulevard, if you really want to understand how deprived and how depressed one of the communities are that you're in, all you got to do is go and look for the churches. And there's one on every corner, right? And now what I'm starting to see when I drive down these streets is I'm starting to see a rainbow flag hanging on to the church, which completely goes against the word of God, 100%. As a matter of fact, for those that are not familiar, a rainbow was a covenant between God and man that he would never flood the earth again. It was a covenant between God and man in the word in the word of God that he would never flood the earth again.
With Noah.
We've perverted it to mean something completely different, to be all inclusive, and they're more focused on membership than they are on the actual word of God, which is why people that really are looking for the meat and potatoes are walking away, and they saying that we don't want to participate anymore because our leadership, to your question, has failed us.
So it's the leadership. Exactly. They didn't hold the line. They didn't hold to the beliefs, but it's the same things. Like half my family is Christian. The other half is Jewish. The Jewish side has found that they have nowhere to go because Reform Judaism has gone into radical leftism. Like
it has. And when Anton was talking, it actually reminded me, because I'm Jewish. but I'm an Orthodox Jew, so
Right.
I'm out of touch with the vast majority of how Jews view it. But from what I see, they tend to be similar to what Anton was just describing with the Black community, where it's about it's about the cultural elements to religion rather than the doctrine itself. Where it's like, this is a cool thing to do, so we're gonna hang out. Like on Passover, we'll have our matzah balls, and we'll have our various Jew type things, or light a menorah on Hanukkah, and do the things that are ostentatiously Jewish in order to remind ourselves that we're Jews twice, 3 times a year. And then the rest of the time, it's like, okay, I might throw in some Jewish types of terms every once in a while, throw out an oive, and people think that people will remember that I'm Jewish, but for the most part, it has no impact on the day-to-day activity. And I think that's what I heard Anton describe. If I misrepresented what you just said with respect to the Black community, I'm curious whether you think that that comparison seems apt.
No, it's you spot on.
In most Black communities, the church is basically a social club.
It is.
I always thought it was more than that.
No, it's a social club.
And that's not
you have to understand,
condition
George,
on all
when it comes to religion, like if you were to sit down with any, especially a young Black person, and ask them any questions about the Bible, they won't be able to answer a thing. They couldn't tell you anything about the Bible, right?
The reason I say this is because my Black friends, they always, the way they speak about their church and with their grandmothers, it's like, I always viewed it as like a rock, a foundation of their community. Like,
no, they go there for the music.
Okay.
They go there for the music. They go there for the groove, right? They go there to, you have to understand, man, and going back to voting, Black people vote with emotions. They don't vote on policy.
Everybody.
That's why you can look at that event that Kamala had, right, where she's twerking on stage with Meg Thee Stallion. She probably wasn't twerking, but I know Meg was, because that's all she does. The crowd was fired up, man, right? Not because of Kamala or her policies, but because they were at a Meg concert, right?
Yeah, but you didn't find that.
It's the same thing with church. They go there for the concert.
But didn't anybody find that disgusting? You have a president. Insulting. Okay, see, there you go, Gothix. Insulting.
Well, if you really want to talk about disgusting, and go to any major Black church, and you'll see the person that's leading the music in the choir, it'll probably be somebody that is gay.
Yeah, flamingly gay at that.
I'll tell you this much: what we've seen over the last 6 weeks, and this is how when I'm looking at the whole political landscape, with the attempted assassination on Trump, and there was this instant growing feeling that Trump is a genuine leader, that he is, and that it was cool to vote for Trump. And I think that's what I think terrified the Democrats, because it's like now it's becoming a cultural type of thing. It was tapping into the cultural element of like, let's all vote for Trump because it's cool. He's a leader. He's fighting for America. And I think that's why they were so desperate to try and find some way to sort of jig up the system and change things up, because they saw this cultural development. And I do think that they were, to some degree, effective in stopping that from becoming a cultural phenomenon by changing the conversation from being about Trump to being about the new Democratic heroine in Kamala Harris. But I think that's why the timing came the way the timing came. It had been a few weeks that they were looking to get Biden out. It was only after the attempted assassination, and you saw this cultural rise where even in the black community, people were like, "Oh yeah, Trump, my man," and like they're like, they were getting all excited about the idea of voting for Trump. And the next thing you know, this shift in the conversation just derailed that. And I'm wondering, I think that having a cultural type of thing like that is the best way to try and wrench this stranglehold that the Democrats seem to have on the black community. And the question,
I don't think that the stranglehold is as great as you think that it is. I think that we experienced a honeymoon phase. And like any good restaurant, when you first open the doors, it's going to be full, right? And what she did was she leveraged her sorority and the Divine Nine in order to create some kind of visibility. She showed up at what was called Boule for the AKA sorority down in Dallas during a time right at the moment, which is one of the reasons why I say that it was planned, right at the moment that Biden dropped out of the race in order to solidify and then galvanize that base, which ultimately led to all of those Zoom calls. And then you seen what happened and it played out like it did. I don't think that it is as great as it is. I've never seen this amount of people personally. I've never seen this amount of videos be sent to me of people that are basically black women in particular, which is wild because sister code is tough. It's a tough niche to break through. I've never seen so many people walk away and say, you know what? But I'm not going for it, and I'm not voting for her, and I'm an AK, and I don't really align with her, and I'm a part of the Divine Nine, and you know what? I do align with this whole narrative of, black people first, but I don't like her, and I think that she fake. And I see more people actually becoming more visible and saying, listen, we don't rock with her the way that y'all think that we do, and she does not have the same sway and the same marketing capability as a Barack Obama. And I don't think that it is as great as y'all think that it is.
Well, here's my fear. Here's my fear, because I watched a video you did, Anton. Okay, I'm a big fan of your work. And I watched I watched a video you did with the Zoom call, and there were a couple of Zoom call videos that I saw. In one of them, you had a black woman there who I thought was very honest in that she's like, "Look, I can't really explain why, but I know that by the time I get into the booth, I'm going to end up voting Kamala." Yep. Like I agree with everything you're saying intellectually. Like basically what she was saying was, I agree with everything you're saying intellectually, but I was raised a Democrat. That's who I am. And at the end of the day, I know that when I get into that booth, I'm going to end up voting. I end up voting blue, even if I know it's against my better interest. Like I know it's not the right call, but it's like
that's because they got to go home. You got to go home.
So how do we change that? How do you get to that?
Unless you change your culture. Listen, you said it very earlier, a lot earlier, George. And that is culture. It's a cultural norm. Look, I went to I went to elementary school, public school in Detroit, born and raised here. Then my father seen that I was going down the wrong path. He sent me to private school. He sacrificed buying a new car, and he decided to pay for me to go to tuition for 7 to 8 years. I mean, 7th and 8th grade.
Right.
I went back to high school, and I went back to public school, and I couldn't unsee what I saw. The problem for me was that when I got done going to school, whether I was going to school around a completely different narrative that then taught me that the culture that I grew up in was nonsense, was that I had to go back home to the hood. Mm-hmm. And when I went back home to the hood, I couldn't turn off all of the influences that was around me that was then telling me that I was still supposed to do this, or I had to keep it real, or, I was fighting within myself, a tale between two worlds. Because on one hand, I said that, you know what, I know where I come from. I'm not leaving the hood. The hood is still in me. And on the other hand, I was conflicted because this thing seemed so much more enticing of having a better life that I didn't know even existed until I then was exposed to it. The problem with a lot of people is that they have to go home. You still going to be around a whole bunch of people. You still going to go to church. You still going to be surrounded by the Thanksgiving dinner where the people are going to beat you up and call you a sellout if you voice an opinion at all that's completely different than what is supposed to be the cultural norm. And so you are the culmination of the people that you surround yourself with. The only way that you can really get people to consistently stay out of it and break away from the norm is to ultimately change their environment and their culture. Because they're always going to go back to the thing that they surround themselves by.
And that's why this cultural uprising of it's cool to vote for Trump I think was so pivotal. I agree with you. I don't think Kamala is nearly as popular as they're trying to make her out to be.
No, it's phony. It's AstroTurfed, most of it. Come on,
most of it's AI and crap like that. I totally agree with that. And I also think that after the DNC, but within a week or two after the DNC ends, we're going to start to see the fade. Because at the end of the day, the reason she was so terribly unpopular, the least popular vice president in American history,
she couldn't win a primary.
Is because she's got no policies and she's got no charisma. There's literally nothing to her as a politician. So they're keeping her away from anything other than her scripted rallies. And other than that, they don't want to expose America to her, because whenever anyone gets exposed to her in concentrations that are not thoroughly scripted, they recoil in horror, saying this woman is the most fake, ridiculous person who has no insight or perspectives to add, no leadership, and she's just desperate to try and build her own political power. So that, but at the same time, I do want to see the cultural rise come back up, gin back up after they have their honeymoon phase, after the DNC is over, as we head into the end of August, early September, and start seeing that cultural tide shift. And that's why I was really looking to see, what steps, if any, we can do to help actually,
Listen. Good. Do you know how many calls that I've gotten? Opportunities from people on the left that won't say it openly, but will absolutely offer you some of the biggest opportunities of your lifetime with the underlying message of just shut up. Shut up. Honestly, you are one of the ones that got loose. You need to shut up and stop doing too much. The problem is that, because see, usually what happens is they have something to leverage against you. I'm already good. I'm already straight. I already got enough money. My daughter's college fund is paid for. I don't care about no job, anything like that. So I'm like a loose cannon. And all of a sudden I started getting crazy opportunities when my voice started being a little bit more magnified and started being a little bit more influential than it's supposed to be. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're trying to buy him.
100%. I just listened to Hill Harper, and he said that they offered him $20 million in order to just shut up and drop out of the race and go away and not be a part of the establishment.
Thank you.
What I'm saying is that it's more than just education. You know, I know, Gothix know, Verbal know, George know, everybody on this panel, they not trying to convince us.
Right.
They want to keep sheep, because if you can keep sheep, you can control sheep.
Absolutely. It's
the
about
less informed you are, the less educated you are, the easier it is for people to be able to manipulate you into doing what they want you to do.
Now, what's interesting, Anton, about what you're saying is, if this were like, say, 5-6 years ago, you wouldn't have that kind of power.
Correct.
Like you would just be another Uncle Tom. You just be another coon, right? Like guys like Brandon Tatum and guys like, there have been black people speaking up for a while, right? But they've been labeled as Uncle Toms, and because of that, yeah, they have a voice, but no one was listening. But there are black people listening now, and that's what they're afraid of. Now your voice means something.
Which is why they're telling me to shut up.
Exactly, because now more black folks are listening. They are paying attention. Not as many as I wish, but more. And that's why you have that kind of power now.
So, Gothix, what's our way out of this? We've heard from Anton and Verbal. Come on.
What do you mean out of this?
Yeah, we're not getting out of this.
Well, what I mean out of it, what is the path, the narrow way where we can reach more people to have a greater impact, to wake them up instead of being sheep, so they can be critically thinking and know what's going on before they get boiled like a frog?
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly what we're doing right now. We're having this conversation, and it might not change everyone's mind, but someone is going to take something from this. But unfortunately, I'm of the belief that most people aren't going to wake up until reality smacks them across the face.
Okay. We're going to take a couple of super chats real quick, and then we're going to go back to what happened this week. Again, I said before we started this part of the conversation, how when you have a political campaign for president, part of it is to show how you're going to be able to manage that campaign. And then it goes, it gives people a little glimpse of how you might be as president. Well, we saw Trump. So we had 4 years of Trump. That's black and white. We saw Biden and Harris. So we're going to read these super chats, and we're going to see how she's already started to behave. All right, Mike, let's tune them up. Mexican Iron Man gifted 10 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. I hope you grabbed him. Our producer is a wonderful man. and he provided them for you. Mr. Buttcrack Media, hail George, and to the panel and the awesome chat. Hail to you, Mr. Buttcrack Media. Always love seeing you. He's here every Sunday and every Slayer Nation stream. Tender Warrior 68 gifted 10 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. Tender Warrior, you are the man. Please go thank Tender Warrior. Pick them up. And I postponed yesterday's members stream till next Saturday. So pick them up so you can join me there. Thank you, Tender Warrior. Graph Web for $2 in the name of all that is holy. Cancel Disney Plus. I'm telling you, Graph Web is just brilliant. Every stream he sticks to the point. Cancel Disney Plus because of what they become. Thank you, Graph Web. You are on target every time. Olaf, my good friend, member for 7 months. DEI means divide, exclude, isolate, and indoctrinate. I like that. I always thought of it as didn't earn it. That's cool too. Jim Alaska is back. How you doing? Hope you and the family are well. Gifted 20 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. Oops, almost cut it down. Go thank Jim. He's there. He just made 20 new people members. Prince L. Lee N for $2. Salute and shout out to Mr. Daniels and the Bag Chasers. Yeah, Anton is amazing. Thank you, Prince L. Eric Heffelfinger for $20. PA State Department is saying it could take days to count the votes. It's not getting the attention it needs. I know. It's ridiculous. We're starting to see these things pop up. There is no path to winning for Harris without Pennsylvania. Yeah, but you know why she didn't pick Shapiro? Because of the fact that part of the wing of the Democratic Party today is radical anti-Israel, and they're pro-Hamas. So they couldn't have that on their ticket. Thank you, Eric Heffelfinger. Gregory Leiber for $5. You guys are public enemy number one. Anton, you calling you guys? Kind of funny. Thank you, Gregory. Olaf for €6. Guess someone doesn't know difference between mourning to mourn a loss of someone. And mourning shows how poorly educated people are in the USA, right? Yep. It's nuts, Olaf. It's the public education system today and people not taking advantage of the opportunities they have. Richard Edwards for £2 sent in a super sticker. Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate it. And we have Dan Vask for, is he in Bolivia, Peru, Colombia for, I think it's 100 reals. Anyway, listening while playing some MS-DOS. Oh, okay. Thank you, Andre. Oh, there you are. Listening while playing some MS-DOS Doom. Hail you all. Hail Dan Vass. Greatest voice on the internet. Eric K, member for 7 months. Vote and make sure it was counted correctly. Vote with your heart. Vote with your wallet. And make sure it's counted correctly. Thank you, Eric K, the king of the mods. Lucia gifted 5 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. You know, Lucia has been here, I think, since day one when I started the channel. Love you, Lucia. Thank you always. Go thank her. And then we have Skull Leader 2016 for $50. The NAACP got President Wilson elected. He segregated military and DC workforce, endorsed the Klansmen, birth of a nation. That was the day the black vote became meaningless as black people actively acted in their own best interest. Thank you, Skull Leader 2016. You helped keep the lights on. LeGarrette for $20. Shout out to Anton. Thank you, LeGarrette. And Pablo Papano for $5. Satanism has infected the church. The most popular churches are not secular and more Bible focused. I think Gothix probably might agree with you that a lot of the churches have been infected. Yeah. And I think we had Skiz Spivak, member for 7 months. Hail George, an amazing panel. And RMB, happy birthday. It's always Robert Meyer Burnett's birthday here. So I want to, Skiz Spivak gifted 20 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. Wow. Thank you, Skiz. You're coming through, keeping the lights on, keeping us growing. Go thanks, Skiz. And Skiz, I hope to see you in the next member stream next Saturday. Now, we got a little bit of taste this week, another taste of how Kamala would actually behave with a little bit of power. So I don't know how many of y'all heard of this, but her Secret Service detail went into a salon. It was closed, broke it down after picking the lock, put tape over the mirror so some people from the campaign could go use the restroom. Hold on.
How is that legal?
That's a good question.
This is creepy. They made her close down because of the campaign. So they made sure she was closed.
Well, there's two stories. One that says they made her close, another that says she wasn't there, and actually a third that says they picked the lock.
I think all three are true. I think they made her closed and they knew she wasn't there and then they picked the lock.
So here's the thing. So we saw, because remember, it's Kamala who's running for president. So she's the head cheese. Buck stops with the boss. If she's in charge, she's not even president. Hopefully she never is. But her Secret Service team used that authority. They apologized later for it. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a layman. Isn't that a violation of the Third Amendment of quartering troops in a certain way? Well, I've been reading about it, and I really wanted to know, would you consider that in some way? Is there any possibility? I mean, it shows us that she's going to abuse power. But I was reading, it says, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So how could it be? Couldn't it be argued that the armed person protecting the president or vice president meet the general guidelines for a soldier in peacetime? I mean, they're breaking into somebody's home without permission.
To me, that's a more obvious claim. That was the first thought I had when I heard about this. I thought of the Third Amendment, and I was like, you don't really hear people raise Third Amendment claims very often, because it specifically was referring to, I mean, back in pre-Revolutionary War, British soldiers were literally quartered where they would stay for months on end in a particular residence because they just took it over. I don't know that using the bathroom would qualify as quartering, but that doesn't mean that what they did here wasn't thoroughly illegal. They don't have a right to break into someone's private residence. It sounds like there's all sorts of Fourth Amendment issues there where they're illegally seizing the property, even for a temporary basis. And to me, that's a more obvious type of thing. It does harken back to the onerous policies of King George III because of what you just pointed out. But I actually think that there are far more direct violations that are easier for her to press if, in fact, she's looking to get compensated. Although I have a feeling they're going to offer her.
Andre,
I was told that Trump was going to be the dictator leader.
Oh, that they're weird. Wait till we get to Tim Waltz in a second. Andre, what do you think of that? You've been quiet for a little while. Do you think that shows a little insight to how she would use power?
Kind of, yes, because this is like one kind of incident that it's very easy to dismiss, because I'm sure that they would much rather have a headline of, it's not even going to be a headline, because this is not something that's going to get wide press release or press coverage, but what there is, I'm sure they would much rather have Secret Service commandeered private property for toilet purposes rather than Kamala Harris took a dump on the street. I'm sure that one of those two is less embarrassing than the other. At the same time, though, it is exactly as you say. It is being a little bit willy-nilly with the law. And we have previously seen, just a couple of months ago, how the law has been used against political opponents. So here we then see that it's a very clear distinction of one set of rules for me, which is basically whatever I want at any time, but we're going to come down hard on you and really push things to that effect.
But
now,
this isn't shocking either, though, right? I mean, it's not shocking because we already seen Democrats try to pretty much legalize illegal immigrants squatting in people's homes, right? So they're already pushing that anyway. So her doing this bathroom thing seems kind of small league compared to that.
And looting, for that matter, yeah.
And looting.
Oh, Tim Waltz's wife.
Wait, can you imagine if Trump would have done this, though?
Be on the front page.
Oh,
on every newspaper in the world.
Set of standards. It's always a whole nother set of rules. Listen, we don't even have to refer to this video. We can refer to so many different things. Again, I've already given an example of Andre Dickens and Fonnie Willis from Georgia going into the White House as public information. But we don't even have to go back that far. We can go into her being a border czar, and we can go even further back to her being a district attorney in San Francisco. There was a man on death row who she wanted to hold back evidence in order to be able to prevent him from being executed. That is a widely known story. It is not hidden. For some reason, everybody forgot about that. There is so many different instances, and people are speaking up because they were directly affected. And this is one of the benefits of having social media, because now you have so many different people that's able to come up and say, hey, listen, this happened, to where there was evidence being tampered with inside of a lab that ultimately compromised her ability to be able to prosecute people. But she tried to push it through anyway. And as a result, she benefited from it. And even though other people suffered as a result of it, she still benefited from it because she has the ability to be able to refer to her record back in San Francisco and say, look at what I did as far as making sure that I kept y'all community safe, despite the fact that she was able to bend the rules in order to do so. So when I see stuff like this from her, I'm not surprised, right? I don't look at it and say, oh, wow, what is going on? Wow, I can't believe that she did it. I very much expect it. I very much expect it from somebody like her, because the history of what it is that she's done, and even when you take it into consideration that she is not a person that the Democratic Party or anybody chose, and her ability to be able to get out of a primary because she absolutely was not supported in the first place, and then they gave her to us in the first place without any credibility whatsoever, speaks to exactly what type of presidency she would have.
Right. I think I agree with you 100%. I think that's the other reason why they've been trying to reach out now to influencers. Have y'all seen that story where she keeps reaching out to influencers? It's crazy. Here's one of them I saw the other day, and it's one of 4 that I found. Hold on.
All right, guys, time for some drag queen story hour. So about a week ago, I received this email from a group called Palette Media or Palette Management. And basically what they were asking for is $1,500 for anti-Trump content on TikTok. So they basically sent me this kind of like creator brief with all the asks that they have and everything, and like do's and don'ts, like don't show any form of support for Donald Trump and his allies, gloat about Harris and her allies, attack Trump supporters for their intellectual or personal values. So they're basically creating division and paying for division online, which is crazy. So me being me, I was like, I kind of got to investigate this stuff. So I started like emailing back and forth with the lady. So I basically said, thank you for sending over. I will review. Is the Kamala campaign, is this for the Kamala campaign or for like a PAX campaign? And basically I was able to investigate and find out that this is actually a campaign with Future Forward, which is kind of like one of the biggest super PACs, and they have like millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars for advertisements for the Biden campaign and for the Harris campaign.
So that's just one of them. Then there's Kai Cent that I found.
Wow.
Yeah, here it is. And that one was a little bit wild. Where did he go? There it is. And there we go. So you can see they're trying to reach out to everyone.
Oh, I saw this.
House in New York. And on top of that, I got the fucking Secret Service calling me 5 times, nigga! Shit about politics, my nigga. I don't know nothing. I got
Here, pick it up here.
Details. Say it right now. If this some way, somehow, something was to go into where I do the stream of politics, I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to sit on my stream and say, why did you guys call me? You know, I don't know.
So everything is literally being AstroTurf. It's just like, look how big we are. We saw last week, and in the last 48 hours, the pictures from the rally. I don't know how many in the chat, how many in the audience saw these.
The AI pictures, yeah.
The AI pictures, come on, that's amazing. Hold on.
By the way, George, can you post those links in the private chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let me pull these up. This was something that Dom Luker shared, and I thought was kind of interesting. He says, "Do you see what I see?" And he goes on, when you click it, he's like, "Where are all the black people at Kamala Harris's event?"
No black people ever wanted to come out for it. That's very organic. Very organic.
Yeah. And then you have here breaking Kamala Harris campaign X account caught sharing video of Trump's rally in Montana. And you could see again the difference.
So we're gonna let you see that.
So you have Harris is down here, which was half empty, but when they were showing it on NBC and MSNBC, of course, they didn't show that area. And then you have Trump's above. We're going to go, where is the last one? You know, Elon brings up, before I get to the next influencer, he brings up a good point here. You watch the Hunger Games and sided with the Resistance. You watch Star Wars and sided with the Resistance. You watch The Matrix and sided with the Resistance. You watched Divergent and sided with the Resistance. You watched V for Vendetta and sided with the Resistance. When it's fiction, you understand, yet you refuse to see it when it's the reality you're living in.
Wow. Very powerful.
I mean, it's
We're literally living in 1984 right now. I mean, come on.
Right, where is the one that I was looking for? Oh, no.
Yeah, I've seen a few shots that looked like worse AI than Jaws 3 4K.
Yeah.
It's horrible looking. I mean, people have like big ass Pac-Man mouths, and one dude's arm was like coming completely disconnected from his body and stuff.
It is. That's what I'm trying to find. Do you think this is going to get worse, Gothix, or RMB? You're with Hollywood. You know they play all these types of games.
Oh, all you have to do is look at people posting videos every day of how AI is getting better. And there's some really shocking. There's a friend of mine who's director of photography who has been at the forefront of new image generation AI, and it's shocking. Over the last 2 weeks, we're now seeing photorealistic people that are indistinguishable from the real thing. I mean, the technology is rapid. It's advancing so fast that people have no idea what's coming. I mean, it's going to get to the point where no photographic evidence is going to be acceptable in a courtroom.
Well, thank God it's still screwed today. Look at that.
Well, you don't even need to look at their faces. Look at their shirts. They're not even letters. Like,
yeah, no, but all of that is rapidly, the technology is rapidly growing. And I just want to chime in and say, I too, like, I'm Jewish, and I've been a Democrat for most of my life, but I went to Kamala Harris's page, and all it does is ask for money.
Yep,
I wanted to see where her policies, like, what if you expect me to vote the Democratic ticket? We live in a deeply insincere time, and as the world itself is rapidly becoming, I mean, it's heating up in ways we don't even know. There are foreign bad actors that are taking this country apart via social media every day, and no one seems to be either blissfully unaware of it, or the people that are fighting this are in some clandestine bunker somewhere. But I'm waiting to see. I mean, this shouldn't be a team sport, and it shouldn't be fomenting hatred for the other team. I mean, we're all Americans. We all live under the Bill of Rights. We all live under the Constitution. And I want to know what the Democratic Party is taking into the November elections. What do they believe in? What are we going to get? I mean, I'm a recent homeowner, which has changed my perspective on California, certainly. And I
live in California.
Yeah.
Which is what Kamala wants to turn America into.
I mean, I've been here for 36 years, and I'll tell you something. If you watch, there's a great video, a YouTuber that I really enjoy watching, Dad Saves America.
Oh.
And he did a really interesting video on communism and the communist infiltration of our political, especially on the Democratic side. It's really worth watching, and I really like his content. But that's what I want to know. We're going into what could be one of the most important elections in our country's history, and I feel that no one is playing it at all seriously on both sides. I want to hear policy. I want to hear real substantive arguments or debate, and it seems like we've been reduced to this rah Mickey Mouse. I mean, maybe that's the way it's always been. But
Robert, I would say that even saying is sports is actually kind of, even in sports, there's more respect for the other team usually than in that. Like there's.
I totally agree with you, and I mean, I'm disappointed that, like we have pointed out, there was no primary, there was nothing to elect or to put Kamala Harris in the place that she's in right now. She was just, some people, and I wouldn't quantify this, but when I saw the word coup used, I didn't sit there and go, no. I was like, that's very interesting, because have we seen, what precedent is for something like this?
Can I ask you a question, Robert?
One day.
Can I ask you a question, Robert?
Yes, sir.
Is it
Anton, it's
more?
great. By the way, it's an honor to stream with you, sir. Great to
Oh
meet you
man,
face
I
to face.
appreciate you. I'm just I don't look at myself as all of that. I'm just a regular guy, and I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. So I don't get caught up in all of that viral stuff. But I appreciate you. Let me ask you a question. Is it better to win, or is it better to just win fairly?
I think it's better to win fairly, because
Well, see, that means that you're a person of integrity. But I don't believe that politicians in general think the way that you think or what America thinks like. I think that the only thing that matters is who wins.
Well, I think it's become that way, sadly. But I mean, you haven't known me much, but on my, this is a new microphone. I had Frederick Douglass, a sticker of Frederick Douglass, who's one of my favorite American statesmen and one of the greatest one of the orators in American history. And his July 4th speech is something I read every year. And there were people of great integrity and there were great political thinkers. We just have lost them because everyone is for sale. And we're going to find out that right now, the next 10 or 15 or 25 years in this country's future, that ain't going to fly. And people who win or lose, and if that's all you're caring about, we're going to be in a world of hurt, because I don't think that America has been more threatened since perhaps the midst of the Cold War, or the end or the middle of World War II, than we are right now.
I would even say society as a whole has been just dumbed down. So that's why you don't see that as often, right? Like, well, I try to talk policy with anybody out on the street.
But I would say what's going on even here, this conversation, this is what's important. I mean, and thank God, George, you're putting on this kind of a show, because we need the free flow of ideas without wanting to kill one another, and be able to sit down and have a cogent, quiet, thoughtful conversation. Like my entire YouTube channel, I've come out and said, and I get hell for this all the time, I'm like, look, Donald Trump was president of the United States. Whether you're a fan of his or not, he was president of this country. And rather than, if you're not going to have a serious conversation about him potentially being president again without deciding, and making jokes about an assassination attempt on a former president, I don't have time for that.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think you're a lot more optimistic than I am. I think humanity, I think humanity is just, we're a bunch of morons for the most part. And the politicians know this, right? They know this and they play on it.
But were we always morons? That's the question.
But no. I think we were more informed. We used to be more informed about at least about the important things. We're not informed anymore. Now we vote on emotion, right?
I don't know if I agree with that 100%.
You think we're more informed now than we were back then on policies?
I think we're more misinformed now.
We have more information now. Sorry.
Because ever since the 24-hour news cycle, things have been different, right? It used to be that you'd only stop to watch the news once a day, maybe twice. Otherwise, unless you were reading a newspaper, the news was over here and your life was right here. Now with the 24-hour news cycle, everything has kind of come into focus in front of us all the dang time, especially with social media. But what we're getting is inundated with misinformation constantly. Like, what did we talk about earlier is how the left controls the media, right? And they'll gaslight us endlessly. We can sit there and go, look, we got the proof right here. They're like, no, that's a cheap fake.
Obama won on Yes We Can. That's how stupid we are. He won on Yes We Can. Did we know any of his policies before
Obama won also as the first social media president, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So when you take that into consideration, you also have to understand that the information that we were getting prior to Obama wasn't the greatest information, because we only had certain social media outlets. Think about it like this. It's a reason why they're reaching out to influencers. One of the reasons that Kamala Harris is spending so much money on influencers, like trying to get Kai Cenat and people like that to ultimately participate in the election process, is because they seen the organic reach that Donald Trump had when he was streaming with Aiden Ross. Right. Aiden Ross genuinely wanted to educate himself and reached out to him to have a conversation that ultimately led to one of his biggest streams of all time, right? And so what I see happening is that I think that media in general is starting to lose control, and you see people cutting the cord and people are starting to walk away. Listen, my morning show is growing by leaps and bounds. And there are people that traditionally would stream regular, everyday CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all of those, ABC, and they only tune into me in the morning now. And so you're starting to see a proliferation of that. You're seeing that a proliferation of that across sports. People are turning off ESPN and they're starting to watch their favorite podcasters and live streamers have real conversations, and they're becoming more informed because, like me in particular, I'm not a person that's saying that you have to vote Republican. I'm a person that's going to ask you, why are you voting the way that you're voting, and to be able to substantiate your argument. Because even if you're voting for Donald Trump, but you're voting it out of ignorance, if somebody has a conversation about it, you then make the rest of us look bad because it looks like you're an uninformed voter.
100%.
The only thing that I ask people to do is substantiate your argument. I watched Gothix live stream, or that wasn't a live stream, it was a video that she had, and she had a debate, or she hosted a debate here in Detroit. And it very much exemplified the ignorance that people usually would have. And I think that is very much more of the same thing that we've already experienced for an extended period. I don't think that we're any more dumbed down. I think that we're more of the same of what we've already been. We just being able to see it a little bit more on display on social media because people are picking up their phone and they showing how ignorant they really are.
Good point.
I remember a time though when my parents and my grandparents, they can tell you why they were voting the way they were voting. Like they actually had reasons, they had policies, they had reasons why they voted the way they voted.
I can't.
I'll tell you.
I guess I was in a weird situation because it just seemed like
my people voted blue because they said that Democrats was for the poor and Republicans for the rich.
We just watched the video where the influencer said, "Here's a list of all the things we can and can't talk about." Notice the one thing that I didn't see on the list, maybe I'm wrong, was policies.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a perfect example. What's more important to the average American on a day-to-day basis as far as what affects their lives? Local elections or national elections?
Local.
Okay, cool. So if local elections are more important, which I agree with you, then how come we have a lower voter turnout rate on off election years that then more importantly affect what happens in your community, especially in urban communities, than we have for the national election?
Because they know the media doesn't cover it. They don't hype it. There's no money behind it. And they know that if you gain local control, you'll eventually have more state control in the state. Yeah, it'll
and because those elections aren't publicized, most people aren't going to take a day off of work to go do it.
I think
But
you
it's
guys
important.
I think your debate.
I agree.
I think your debate is on two different levels here, because we've seen a splintering over the last couple of generations. 50 years ago, everyone was watching ABC, NBC, CBS News, and that was it. You had one of those three channels. People actually sat down to watch the news. They actually cared about learning about what was happening, and there was an effort for people to become more informed. I think that now, but I think we can look back now and say that they were all getting the same misinformation 50 years ago. They just didn't realize they were getting misinformed. Today we're more enlightened about recognizing when we're
or maybe
being
we have more information.
But I think we're more aware of the fact that we're being gaslit by these, and there's been a splintering where it first went to cable and then to social media, and now through social media it's splintered into literally thousands of different news information outlets, and people are more aware of the fact that they're being gaslit in ways that perhaps
there's no more local news anymore either.
There isn't.
That's the other problem.
Right. It's been splintered, and
that's what I was getting at too. Yeah.
But at the same time, I think people care less about investing the time and effort to actually learn the facts. So they're going to identify with a particular handful of sources that they trust and be like, this is gospel, this is truth, and I am married to this truth because this person who I trust is the one who's conveying it, which has led to all the more power for these social media influencers. But whether or not they're properly informed, they may be informed, they may not be informed, but whether or not they are, there's almost an identification of this person is the person who gives me truth. But
here's the key though: social
without
media
there actually being the
influencers-
effort that earlier generations made. But go on.
Social media influencers are more compromised than ever before today
100%.
because I see people when they go against what the narrative is of what they think their audience is because they understand their demographics, they're then getting, you know, all of the pushback, and then they're retracting and then they're going back. So the influencers are now being influenced by the people. The difference between today and yesteryear is because yesteryear, first of all, you didn't have as many options of entertainment in general, right? So not only did you didn't have that many options of entertainment, but more importantly, we can look at the voting habits. We can look at how the cities turned out. And being a person from Detroit, which is, for example, one of the blackest cities in the United States of America, it has always been one of the blackest cities in the United States of America. We've always voted based off of identity politics until recently, which is one of the reasons why the city has now made such a transformation over the last 10 to 15 years, because we had a black mayor, a black superintendent, a black city council, black police chief, black everything. Everything was black, 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 black. And so if you want to look all the way back into Mayor Coleman A. Young, who was large, he has a statue built in his name. He has buildings named after him. But everybody knows in the city that he was a pay-for-play mayor. And we ran the city into the ground all the way to the point to where it ultimately filed for bankruptcy based off of our voting habits all the way from the 70s up through 2028 or 2008, I'm sorry. And so
people learned. So people learned that.
My point is that people voted based off of popularity and identity politics way back then, not based off of information and what will make the city the best. And that's just one example, but I can give you several different examples. We can go over to Oakland, right? We can go over to Chicago. They sold their streets away. We can look at New York, right? DC. We can look at DC, but my point is that I don't think that people are making or made better decisions back then than they're making now. And I think that they were just as misinformed because they had less options. And then I also believe that when you give people the option to choose for themselves, often at times they choose wrong because they're still choosing based off of popularity and not choosing based off of policy.
But shouldn't it be the reverse, Anton, today with all the information available? Internet's forever. We see it. You want to find something about Kamala, you can see both sides.
Well, you would be saying to yourself that people are going out and actively trying to discover, whereas we're giving the information that is best for us or that the algorithm thinks is best for us based off of our search history and based off of what we're interested in. So you're only going to look. It's a large demographic of people that probably never heard of me until I just went viral this past weekend. Although I've been a content creator for years, right? But it's partially because of the things that they're interested in. That's where the algorithm is recommending them. So you got to actually, prior to that, search for me. Now that I'm being marketed a lot more effectively, people are starting to discover it, but it's not something that they actively search for on their own.
So you're saying they're going for more confirmation bias. What they believe 100%. Is what's fair. Okay, yeah.
They start with their heart, and then they're going to use their mind. They're going to try to use their heart to justify their mind. Jonathan Haidt is an author who wrote books, who wrote a couple of phenomenal books talking.
He's a fantastic. He's one of the best commentators on what's been going on in our social media age, especially with youth.
Yeah, where basically he talks about we make a decision based on our heart and our gut, and then we use our heart and gut to basically to twist our minds and use our mind to rationalize that decision that we intuitively come to. I want to come to a conclusion that Trump is evil, so I'm going to latch onto anything that will help justify that. And cognitive bias becomes such a strong factor. Cognitive bias is when you actually understand something to be completely wrong and it bothers you to see something is completely wrong. So you find ways intellectually to play with your own brain. And I think that that's something that we as humans tend to do. That's not depending on where you're coming from. That's in all ways, we all engage in cognitive bias to one degree or another. The idea is to try and learn how to overcome that hurdle. But when you're talking about large masses of people, you never can expect that that's going to happen, which is why I think what we were talking about earlier, where you need to get into their hearts rather than their minds, is a very important element towards if you're going to try and have a successful campaign.
I agree. But when you look at the content and character, okay, look, we're fighting for the soul of the nation. You have action and reaction. You have two people and you have their characters on display, both what they've done in the past, what they're doing presently, and what they're promising to do. Joe Rogan brought this up. We just saw Kamala Harris. She picked Tim Walz. he states a couple of facts that not many people know about him. Hold on, let me get this going.
Right, she wasn't elected. Right, she was appointed vice president, and then they didn't do primaries. They had no primaries for Joe Biden, and now all of a sudden she is the nominee because he's stepping away. And so then they bring in her, and they bring in this other guy who's radical from Minnesota. That's the vice president, who he believes a lot of wild things. One of them is transgender surgery for people who are under 13. Another one is abortion up until 9 months.
Ooh.
Yeah, but that stuff scares the fuck out of people. He changed the Minnesota state flag to make it look like a Somali flag. Yeah.
Oh.
You haven't seen that?
No.
Yeah.
I have that video about the way he changed it. But when you hear stuff like when that's coming out, I went to look up Waltz's record, right? And he has taken away the rights of parents in other states by making Minnesota a sanctuary state for all gender reaffirming care. So if a child, let's say, runs away from Texas and finds a way to get there, guess what? The courts in Minnesota will not allow those parents to have rights over their children. They can't say, hey, we're showing up and bringing the 12-year-old back home. That's one. Now, how do you have not a backlash of biblical proportion in a country based on originally Judeo-Christian principles where a parent had rights over their children?
He went even further where he said if parents are in a divorce and a child is looking to go trans and one parent is against it, that's basically considered like that parent is being abusive. And
Correct.
That parent would get would have limited if any rights to visitation on the kid, but the custody would automatically transfer over to the parent who's promoting transgenderism in a kid who's 10, 12, 13 years old. I mean, it's horrifying.
I mean, even Obama stated after Trump won office that he went too far pushing the ideology. He thought that might have been one of the reasons why Trump won. Gothix, do you think that's a symptom of more of the moral decay, or it's been around since kind of like the dawn of time? The whole
What do you mean
the whole trans ideology, not even the trans ideology, trying to deny parents access and rights to their children.
I mean, that's what communists do. That's sort of like, you know, if you want to break down the society, you got to break down the nuclear family. I mean, and what better way than to separate kids from their parents? And then also another thing communists do is they like to weaponize language. And so what they're calling abuse really isn't abuse. It's, you know, it's you're trying to get your child to overcome whatever, if you want to call it gender dysphoria, whatever, that's how you help your child. But to them, that's abuse. And by the way, this all goes back to making moral arguments. These politicians are claiming that what you're doing is morally wrong by denying your child gender affirming care. Well, what do you mean moral? Like, where are you getting this from? So you can't avoid that conversation. It just keeps going back to like the root of it, the problem, which is just like, where's your moral compass coming from?
And we keep kind of like really ignoring that. We really do. You always bring it back home. It goes back to God. You got to start here at the beginning, because
this is why also it's because I think that talking about what we're going to do to like win the election is such a topical solution, because as someone who still considers myself politically homeless, I have butted heads with a lot of people on the right on different moral issues. So we all say, okay, we want to save the country, but we all have different ideas of what that entails. And so it's like, even if you agree with someone on a political aspect, there's going to be different avenues of how to achieve this particular goal. And so you end up like going around in a circle with no real solutions.
Right. So the long terms, it's kind of like, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's like we all keep addressing the symptoms and not the core disease. Because if we can solve that core disease, then
yeah, and sort of like what Anton said about being an informed voter. I'm not going to tell you what you should believe, but I want you to tell me why you believe the things that you do. Why do you believe like this is morally right and this is morally wrong? Outside of your opinions, because if you're just going to say, well, I feel like this is wrong, well, the person on the left can say the exact same thing. So what difference are you?
Right. So we're all playing the same game. What did y'all think about
well, that really quick, George? And
go ahead.
I think with that, they play on extremes, right? Like, I believe that if someone wants to be trans, they have every right to be. As an American, you pay your taxes like everybody else. If you're a dude who wants to dress like a chick for some reason, go ahead, man. Let your freak flag fly. That's your business. I don't care. But then when you start talking about children and performing life-changing surgeries on a kid, hell no. I don't agree with that, right? See, there is a nuance that they don't want, you know, to play with. They don't want to talk about, because they know most people, for the most part, are in the middle somewhere, right? But they want you to be on either here or here. You have to be on extremes, and that's where their wheelhouse is, extremes.
I also want to just chime in and say, you're talking about medical, aka scientific intervention in the development of a normal human body. And when you're a child, you're still developing. And we don't even have all of the science as to where that, we don't even know what the micro changes in taking puberty blockers before puberty, what that'll do to you. We know the larger scale things, but there is no science. We don't have any research that says, other than the fact that most people bear out that people with gender dysphoria as younger people usually grow out of it and are gay. Now, if you look at those studies, nobody wants to go back and look at that. And the idea that why you don't listen to a kid tell you to do anything else in the world. What do you know? You're 13.
Right.
I'm not going to listen to anything you say. Why in this particular issue is nobody pushing back and saying that's insane? You know, and like you just said, Dante, let people grow up and do whatever they want. I'm all about that. But when you're talking about medical scientific intervention into the normal development of a physique, that is irrevocably damaging.
People have been pushing back on it. They just get called transphobe when they do.
Right.
In Europe, you've basically stopped doing that. America right now is an outlier in the world. The kind of procedures that you are talking about, they have been banned in Scandinavian countries for years, and they're getting banned more and more places as more and more data is getting there, and you start to have more and more studies on what happens after you have done these interventions. Let's just call it that. And those results are not pretty. They're not pretty at all. Again, that's why they're getting banned all over the place, and America is an outlier that is still allowing it. Worse yet, you still have some ideologues that champion these procedures. That not only do you, it's worse than that there isn't science. There is data, and the data is don't do this.
Well, of course, yeah. You're not going to. I mean, you're doing it to someone who's going through puberty. You're destroying. I mean, we've seen the Olympics. Have y'all watched any part of the Olympics? They're called clips of the news. And when we saw the destruction, the desiccation,
I watched the beach volleyball. That was fun.
Yeah, well, beach volleyball. Yeah,
That was great. With the Eiffel Tower looming overhead. That was amazing.
That's always a nice shot. But it's like from the opening ceremonies where you had the Last Supper being mocked, to the fact that we have not legitimized, but the Olympic Committee has legitimized televising on global television, having a man beat the shit out of a woman and then getting medals for it. That's why you get all of a sudden a governor of Minnesota is able to change a flag. Now, when the AP fact checked it, he said, well, I wasn't involved on the committee. Tim Walz was like, I had no say over the committee, but you were the governor. You could turn it down. You could say, hey, why am I going to change the state flag to match a Somali flag? Because he was catering to local community group, to special interest groups. And we've all seen how the stolen valor thing has come up. Well, I found the videos that have been going around, because I have some Republican friends and some Democrat friends who've been going back and forth. It's like, is that really fair to attack him on that? And I was like, well, let's hear the man's actual words.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those...
What did he say again?
Among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Hey, also, thanked Nancy Pelosi, who thanked him for his involvement in war and going to Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, which he never was involved with. All of this ties together. A man who said, one person's socialism is another person's neighborless. I mean, they're coming out and saying, we're communists, we're here to destroy the country. So when people say this election is for the fight for the heart and soul of America, it's not a joke.
No, it's not a joke, man. I mean, I hate to bring it back to the trans thing, but we literally watched Joe Biden host a tranny party on the White House lawn where they were taking off their tops. Like, that's where we're at right now.
But that's because of what
that's America right now.
The moral collapse. I mean, Andre, do you see that where you live on the same level?
No. You guys have well, I'm not going to say you guys because that's not true. No one here has to.
You guys,
but looking from America, from
what do you mean, you guys?
Yeah, okay, but you guys here, you're all completely sane, and so is the majority of the U.S. population. Sadly, the majority of the sane people are not the ones running the show. What I see from an outsider looking in is a country that has been subversed and is in the process of being normalized in a completely insane way. All of the stuff that you have been getting, that you've been bombarded with, I see a massive, massive psyop. I'm sure many of you have seen this interview with Yuri Bezmenov, the famous KGB, yeah, exactly, with the famous ex-KGB, whose job was going in and destroying nations by subverting them. And he listed through all of these stages that you have to
By the way, it's a 40-year-old interview.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what's crazy.
And the playbook is perfect. Many believe that you're in stage 2 of demoralization. No, you're in stage 4, normalization. The tanks have already rolled in.
Yeah.
And that's what you're happening. You are right now in the process of normalization, where all of this madness is happening specifically to break everyone. That's what's happening. I mean, you are right now, I would say that you are the most propagandized people on earth. And that is saying something, because we are pretty darn propagandized in Norway too. But I mean, the only one that would even come close to you is North Korea. I'm not even joking.
So we're basically, you're saying, high cholesterol North Korea.
Russia.
I don't know. I don't think Europe is any better than America.
No, not much better. Not much better.
I mean,
there's a slight difference.
Your free speech protections. I mean, you're in the UK, people being thrown in jail for what they tweet.
I'm not defending the UK, and I'm the first to admit that democracy has a long way to go in Europe as well, especially in light of the recent EU elections. But just in terms of the mass media gaslighting, it is worse in the US than it is in Europe.
That's possibly true.
Yes, that's what I mean.
I think we have more freedoms. I just think that there's. I'll agree with you.
Well, for now we do.
I can't buy a gun in Norway. I mean, I can get a hunting rifle, but I do not have the level of freedom that you have. So misunderstand me wrong. All I'm just saying is, in terms of the psyop that is being done against you with all of the madness you're seeing, no one has it as bad as you. And what we are getting very much is actually imported from you guys. Like, for instance, the propaganda that is in our news. When I read the propaganda, for instance, covering the American elections in Norwegian news, well, they just picked up the talking points from the New York Times. So we get it kind of like that way. And that's what happens in most of Europe. And then we have our own gaslighting. We have our own global left that is doing the light version of what is being done to you guys nationally. But that's just a light version. I mean, you have it full on. And no one.
I think it could be because
as badly.
I think it might be because of our freedoms that they're working so hard to gaslight.
Exactly, because you are America is kind of like the last stance of freedom in the world right now. America falls, everyone falls. That is why there are so many in Europe who are so engaged. You don't see it, but there's a ton of people who are really engaged in the American elections, and 100% of them are very hardcore MAGA and pro-Trump. And they're not even American, but they know America falls, they're next.
I don't know how you can convince, I don't know how much more data you need to convince people about socialism and communism, how bad it is. I mean, growing up, we understood it. I went to Greece in 2013. A cousin of mine had a barber shop, but he's Greek, but he was born in America.
Yeah, but
And he wanted
a 30-year-old don't know that. They
but
don't have those experiences.
But he wants to stay open 7 days a week because he wants to buy a home, right? He wants to stay open from Monday to Sunday. He tried to stay open. Police came by. It's kind of like business police, but they're still police. The cops came by and they told him, "What the hell are you doing? It's a Sunday." He's like, "Well, I'm working." He's like, "You can't do that." Bottom line, they fined him. Why? Because they say it's unfair to everybody else who's closed on a Sunday, because they're taking the day off to relax. And they're like, "What are you, fucking greedy? You're going to do it so you can get all their business?" And I found the same thing in France. And it's one thing after another. I had an accident there. I went to the damn hospital and the guy's like, "Oh, we don't have medicine for that, but just lay your ass down on the board and we'll sew up." I cut my back. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Call my uncle. He's like, "You need to go to a private doctor." We see this all around, but then I turn around and I see this idiot on fucking MSNBC say this shit.
The significance of this man is that he is an older white man in a moment in which the far right is trying to convince white people that the future is treacherous for them, trying to convince men that the future is treacherous for them. And here is an older white man, a coach, a soldier, who is very hard to dismiss as some kind of effete coastal elite, who is telling older folks and white people, "You do not need to be afraid of the future. There is joy in the future. There is joy in having your boss be a black woman. There is joy in what is coming." And I think he is going to teach lots of people, in addition to whatever role he plays in an election and in the White House, he's going to teach lots of people through his role in the culture that they're going to be okay, and that there's joy on the far side of realizing a multiracial democracy in this country.
I'd like to know what fucking drugs he's taking.
Yeah.
Hey, when you hear something like that, Anton, I mean, you just laugh when you see clips like that come back. I mean, you're like,
for me, it's 100% gaslighting, because they don't want us to focus on policy and they don't want us to have a conversation about the things that really matter to Americans. What I found is that, throughout my journeys across this YouTube sphere, is that more people are concerned about inflation, their ability to be able to buy a home. They're more concerned with whether or not they can go to the grocery store and get food. They have this impending doom that comes along with now having to pay their student loans, now that the rent moratorium and the student loan era is over as far as putting that on hold. They're concerned about real life issues. One of the things that Republicans have going in their favor is that even though they're selling this idea that we're not really in a recession, in most people's individual lives, they are afraid. There is more layoffs that is happening. Kellogg's just closed plants, and they thinking about closing a plant over in Memphis. They just closed a 75-year plant. Tech workers are being laid off exponentially at an accelerated rate. And so people's real lives, which is the thing that is then forcing them to reevaluate whether or not they would really vote the same way that they've been voting historically, because it's okay and we can play games as long as my pocket's not hurting. But when I start to suffer, that's when you start to evaluate and you say, you know what? That's one of the reasons why Obama got in office, to be honest with you. The reason that Obama got in office is because Bush too had did such a mind crazy. He had did so bad, to be honest with you. The economy was so bad that people were willing to try anything as an alternative to what they had experienced, especially leading up to the 2008 meltdown and which was the recession, especially here in Michigan and in Detroit, where we were the hardest hit by what was happening in the economy, Michigan and Florida and Las Vegas, right? So what I see them doing is basically gaslighting us, and they're putting all of this little fluff on the real issues that we really need to be having a conversation about. And to an extent, I think that it's working, but I don't think that it's working as effective as they thought that it would, because it's continuing to get worse leading up into November. It's getting worse, exponentially worse. So when I see that, I'm happy for it. I enjoy it because they reaffirm what I've already said, and what is really happening is that she don't have no policies, she don't have no solutions. Everything that we've experienced under the Harris-Biden administration has been absolute trash, and people did not benefit over the last 2.5, 3 years.
But wait, she's not going to tax tips. She came up with that on her own. That she's not going to tax tips.
Trump.
Have you guys did Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, any of that recently? Let me tell you what I see coming to my door. I see a lot of people that don't even speak English coming to my door using somebody else's profile in order to deliver DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats to my door, because it is bad. It is really starting to take over what's really happening here in America, especially in any of these urban communities and cities. That's what I see.
I had DoorDash a week ago. I was trying to communicate. They couldn't. I mean, the fact is that we've had this open borders invasion thing going on now.
Oh, hold on. Let me do you one better, George.
Yep.
Robert, I'm not sure what area you live in, but I've been back in
LA, outside of LA.
Listen, I traveled to LA. I stayed in Glendale, but I went down to LA. It's crazy there.
Oh,
it's
I know.
Absolutely insane. You go over to San Francisco, even LA. If you're walking down the street, you have to walk looking down. You can't even be situationally aware what's going on around you because you might step in a pile of poop. If you're going over to San Francisco, it's insane. Oakland, I believe, is going to be the next city to file for bankruptcy. It's insane what these cities have become. It is tent city in DC. You walk over to the White House and you're going to see tents walking over to the Treasury and to the White House itself. That's crazy.
Well, I'm from Seattle and my sister lives in Portland, and those cities, it's the same thing.
I know.
It's all the
Sacramento.
I mean, it was born out of an idea of help. People are trying to help. I mean, I really do believe that people have good intentions. The problem is no one is willing to address the real problems. You can't solve homelessness until you first solve mental health and addiction issues. And the problem is there's no profit in that. When you say, let's build low-income housing, everybody gets a taste.
But that's California, not what they did, Robert. They built $165 million, $600,000 per unit permanent housing.
That's that's right. So, and everyone got their taste, but people don't even want to live in those things. You can't solve the homeless problem without first taking care of the very people that are homeless.
Right, but
they don't know how to live in it. They don't know how to live in a house.
Better. It's no possible way for these people to be able to pull themselves out of homelessness or living in their cars without the ability for you to lower the cost of living. You can McDonald's is pulling out of California because they have to pay their workers $25 an hour to flip burgers.
Well, and the workers now want more.
And look at how much they're charging for fast food now.
Exactly.
They've upped the prices.
So now it's a
no one can afford McDonald's. You go
Big
get
Mac.
You can't get a meal deal there because it's $15.
Well, and the other thing you guys aren't talking about is the fact that California has practically legalized crime, right?
Yeah, they have.
And that's, to me, that's been the biggest part of all of this, man, is the fact that now in Beverly Hills at a cafe, you can get mugged literally just eating on the patio.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's San Francisco too. You look at the city council now wants to go and sue the drugstores and Walmart and Walgreens for leaving the city because they're doing it out of racist-based policy initiatives. They're like, no, we're getting robbed every day, and the police aren't stopping them.
But you can steal up to, what is it, $900?
$900.
You can steal $900. Like, whoever thought that was, like, I don't know what universe somebody said that was a good idea.
It's to destroy a city. That's the plan. It's to annihilate
if 100 people, steal $900 worth of shit, you know what I mean? That adds up.
What you'll start to see is businesses are basically leaving en masse. Even Chevron said that we're relocating over to Texas. We're leaving California, and it's no different than what's happening over in Chicago. Chicago is down 2,000 police officers. Every time that they have a major event over in Chicago, it takes resources from the neighborhood. So, for example, they had the Grand Prix. You got the Democratic National Convention that's coming up in Chicago this next week, right? And so what happened was they're down so many police officers that not only some cops are making upwards of almost $250,000 a year in overtime, But also on top of that, Chicago is at a budget deficit, California at a budget deficit, and more importantly, it leaves the rest of the neighborhoods to be not policed at all because all of the resources are dedicated to whatever special event is going on in the city.
And not to mention the.
So what you're saying is next week's going to be a great time for crime.
It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be phenomenal.
But not only that, these businesses that are being hit hard by shoplifting, they have to pull out, which means our tax base is diminished.
Yep.
Employment opportunities for young people go
Right.
away. And
that's
so
the doom loop. That's the doom loop.
And it's insane to me.
Right, but do you see nobody, Robert, ever goes to shoplift, meat, sandwiches, food? It's always Apple, drugs.
Well, not only that, we have like my local grocery store has self-checkout.
Yeah. Oh.
Half the people that go to those are taking half the stuff that they have.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Easily.
leaving
That's
without
insane.
paying.
What about the other half in New York City? I think we showed it a couple of days ago on a stream where it was called the EBT, the monthly check that they were getting from New York City and from the state.
We have that here in the state too.
$14,000 per illegal immigrant. $14,000. We popped the receipt up and they had $4,000 left. Now imagine that. Non-citizen getting $14,000 a month. Some are getting 10, some are getting 5, some are getting 8. But the fact that they're getting $1.
They're doing better than that. They got free housing and a hotel. You also get free English classes. You get free healthcare coverage. You get free busing to and from the school. They are also enrolled in your school. Oh, it's way the total compensation package of being an illegal immigrant in the United States of America is phenomenal.
Which is all coming from us as taxpayers
for years already. Like
which makes it even more frustrating for to think about the fact that black folks don't see the fact that we're the ones more affected by this, or at least the ones living in those areas, than anybody else, because they're moving black people out to move them in.
Well, look what
pisses
happens
me
in
off-
Oakland. I mean,
Sorry, it was going. Tom, what were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say my kid's disabled, right? So he gets benefits. He gets jack squat for benefits. I have to help him with food a lot of the time. And when I saw that receipt, I almost blew a gasket.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Because he doesn't get nearly like enough to live off of, let alone to eat and all that kind of stuff. So,
But I'm conflicted though, George. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
I'm very, very conflicted because on one hand, I identified a problem and I call it for what it is, right? On the other hand, I almost believe that we deserve it.
They say you get the government you deserve. They say you get the government you
So I can't sit here and say that the people over in California who continues to embrace Gavin Newsom and, vote in Karen Bass. I am very familiar with California politics, and Shane Tao over in Oakland and London Breed over in San Francisco. I can't say that I am not elated to see all of the poop on the ground, considering that this is what the people advocated for. And so the only way for me to really be able to put a lesson in front of people's faces to say, look at what you did. Now you made your bed and sleep in it.
So you're basically saying, for some, it's maybe the best thing is they're going to have to go through
Suffering
this.
is necessary in order to teach a lesson, because it is a better teacher than anybody that could actually try to tell you that you shouldn't be doing this. Okay, listen, go ahead and deal with that, and then we're gonna see how that plays out later on for you.
Yeah, I think Gothix said it earlier, man. Like I think things have to hit the fan for people to change.
Yep.
Otherwise, they're not going to. California needs to sink for us to get it right.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And Gothix is always on point when she shares her wisdom. And what you just said, Anton, sometimes you have to go through it. I don't think you know this about me. Some people in the audience do and on the panel. I was kidnapped at the age of 7 and tortured for a year before my family rescued me. Right. And I stood up. That's kind of like where the channel got its name. It was my motivation, George the Giant Slayer, because I stood up to my kidnapper. And I learned the lesson early on. Like, pain is a part of life. But today, people don't want to feel discomfort. They want to plop on the couch, turn on the telly. And as long as that's happening and you have something to eat, they're like, the world will figure itself out. I'm like, you have got to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable if you want to change it. Otherwise, you're going to go through hell and back. And there's this gentleman, I shared it 2 weeks ago, but I always think it's important to share it again. To me, this is one of the most heartbreaking things I've seen in the last weeks, besides what's happening to children.
Okay, an immigrant left a receipt in the store. And you know how I got the food stamp remaining balance at the bottom of the receipt, right? $13,500 with a $5,000 cash, Larry. Okay. Migrant, somebody that's not from this country.
This
Now,
is a U.S. veteran.
You are a veteran, and you've also served this country, correct?
Correct.
Now tell these fucking people, okay, after I just said they left the receipt with a $13,000 food stamp balance. Tell these people, as a veteran that served this country, right? Tell them how much food stamps you get in a month.
$23.
Now, how is that even possible in the United States of America? Illegal?
Well, the fact that he even has to get food stamps is crazy to me.
Of course it is. Vets should be taken
Because we
care of.
bought into the lie.
Bought into the lie. Maybe it's that we've strayed too far. Maybe it's that's why I always go back to Gothix. I really do believe it's everyone here has shared what a part of the problem is. But there's something fundamental that we're lacking that has allowed us to stray so far as a nation. Because you have, look, Anton built himself up, entrepreneur, streamer, Gothix, Andre, Verbal, Good Logic, is also a lawyer, RMB. It can be done, and it's happening. But when you turn around and you look at people, they're like, "Oh, I can't do anything about it. I got to put my head."
Oh, that's no fun. That is not a great marketing strategy to say, "Hey, listen, look, I would be much more successful and have a much bigger platform if I told people, listen, let me figure out how to get you rich quick." For me to say, hey, listen, it's a long road. You're going to have to dedicate yourself. You're going to have to work hard and all of that stuff. People don't want that. As a matter of fact, we don't want it so much that we don't even watch movies anymore. We have short form content that keeps us distracted and it keeps us in this scrolling doom loop that ultimately is not going to be best for us. And so for us to deep dive into the solutions of what America really needs to get itself back together, that's the boring conversation. The thing that we want, which is one of the reasons why politicians pitch to us and they talk to us and they say, yeah, and listen, they want to take away your rights. They're not going to add no context. Oh man, Roe v. Wade and Project 2025, he's not associated with that at all. But it's easy for us to lean into it because it's great marketing and it's great skill. So the thing that I honestly believe it's unfortunate, but it's just the way that it has to be. It's a roller coaster, and you're going to have to go through a cycle where you got to suffer in order to understand exactly what you're supposed to do going forward. The problem with people is that we don't live to be 1,000 years old to learn from our lessons. By the time we learn a lesson and we become educated as a result of it, younger generations is going to say, well, we don't care what you had to say. We want to live our own lives, and then they're doomed to repeat the lesson, right? So that's what's basically happening in America. And that's why it's so easy, despite the fact that we have a short history where we can research and find out who did what historically and how we were affected as a result of it. We're bound to repeat the lesson because we don't live to be 1,000 years old and we haven't suffered enough.
Right. And then maybe we have to find a way to market the long road journey in a better way, the same way the politicians do.
You got to incentivize people to do the thing that's in their own best interest.
I think the other part we're not looking at either, though, is that America is a bought and paid for country.
It is.
Right? The politicians aren't really running anything, if you really think about it. Right? It's the people who back them that are pretty much running everything. So it's their agenda that matters, not the politicians.
Okay.
And we're never going to be able to beat those guys. So at least not.
You know what? I disagree with you there. I think we can. It's been proven throughout systems. All you require is 1 to 3% of the people to shift and change anything. It's just getting those 3% of the people. Why do you think revolutions happen? You've had kings, dynasties, emperors
because they suffered. Because the people got tired of suffering. That's
we're not suffering enough.
Right. Yeah, exactly right.
So you're not going to see any change. Look, it's much when I go online and I jump on a live stream and I say, hey, listen, let me help you to be successful. That's going to be significantly less of a successful stream than if I say, let me tell you why you broke.
Right.
100%.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So
Okay.
It's marketing. If we learn how to market ourselves more effectively.
Well, but what about the fact, let's go to the underlying root of that. Why would people rather watch your broke stream rather than wanting to make things better? We have already been pre-programmed to, I mean, I hate to say it, but giving into hate. It's much more marketable, and it feels better, or as Yoda would say, it's easier, more
Well,
seductive.
every 4 years, the media literally markets somebody that gets beat by the police. But if you want to do the research, and you'll understand that police officers die exponentially more at the hands of criminals than they ever do, as far as you finding this police officer over here being bad or that police officer being bad. But it's great marketing to say defund the police. Just throw a blanket statement on it. It rings, it hits. Everybody gonna buy a t-shirt. Everybody gonna jump out in the protest. We're not gonna do no research as to who it is that came up to it, or the Marxist organization that's ran by people that's not actually aligned with your values or your morals. But it sounds good and it's great marketing, and we don't like the police. And so we throw it in a rap song. We get somebody to champion it. We get a t-shirt, and we off to the races. Everybody gonna make a bunch of money as a result of it. We with it.
And someone to twerk.
To answer your question, RMB, the difference between those two videos is one of them is telling you to do work and implying that you've been doing something wrong. That's when they're telling you, like, you know, what you can do to become successful. Well, obviously you haven't been doing it. That's why you're not successful.
Correct.
The other video is coddling you, and it's telling you it's not your fault, and this is why you're broke, and all these other forces are working against you, and it's giving you a salve. Like, it's almost like taking you into their
100%.
arms and saying, I'm going to make you feel better. It's not your fault, but it's not actually doing anything to make your life better. And unfortunately, and that's really what we're talking about here. Like, that it's a matter of sometimes having to go through the hard times to face up to the shortcomings if you're ever going to have a chance of actually rising up and making something better out of what your situation is.
It's that old saying. Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just going to say, but that's the real crux of the problem, is that, you know, we as Americans, one of the things I've always said, and when I moved out where I live now, I had a moment where my car, I drive a Prius, judge me if you want, but the car, the tire blew out, and there is no spare tire on a Prius. And
does your wife's boyfriend like your Prius?
Well, but what was interesting was I was waiting for roadside assistance, and I must have had 5 or 6 people, random people that I didn't know, stop and say, "Hey, sir, can I help you? Do you need me to call somebody, or what? Can I do something for you?" Random people didn't know me.
Were they trying to rob you?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But I really believe, in my experience of the time I've lived on this planet, that is most people's, especially Americans' inclination. People usually, I've found that hey, if you want to do something, people will help. People will not for
in
ulterior
California.
motives. Yes, sir. And dude, I'll tell you, I've lived here. I've lived here for 36 years. I'm talking about direct communication with people. And I think for the most part, and this is why I'm optimistic about the human race, when you sit down with people, even if they're diametrically opposed to your points of view, if you need some help, somebody might not agree with you politically, but they might walk over to your house going, "Hey man, I noticed you're having a little problem on the ladder there. Can I hold it for you while you finish, pounding in whatever you're pounding in?" People will help.
Probably somebody's wife. Yeah.
And I look, call me naive, but I do believe that we as Americans.
You know what? I agree with Rob to a point. Here's my issue with that, Rob, and I see why people are kind of making jokes. Maybe
I know it's all right.
Historically, I've always been a Democrat, and I would honestly say yes. Any people that I would have help me that would be diametrically opposed to me political, I've had plenty of people on the right help me out in the past. But when it comes to the left, they're all out for themselves. They could give a fuck about anybody else, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And they're the ones who assume the worst about everybody. And that's where it's gotten at this point. And that's where I've kind of turned, because they left me, man.
Right, I hear that a lot, because they're not liberal anymore. You're talking about radicals. You're talking about leftism. They don't have a belief in God. They have a belief. The woke mind virus is a cult. It has a hierarchy. They get orders, they get directives the same way that Robert and I have talked about, and with Andre and Tom and Dante when we've talked about Hollywood. I mean, I view this as a lot of the battle of Hollywood and DC, of who is going to control the culture in order to command the future? You got the Disney studios out there trying to program kids.
I just want to say that one because I hear that a lot. People call me some Hollywood elite. I've been an independent filmmaker trying to eke out a living and get projects made since I was, for 35 years. Mm-hmm. And I don't have any power, and I don't have particularly lots of money behind me. And I would say that there are many different levels of what Hollywood is. Right. And on one hand, you have people that control great sums of money. You have publicly held corporations. You have things like BlackRock calling the shots over what Disney wants to do. But the people that actually want to get their nose and stick it in the grindstone and actually make things. Correct. I know a lot of great independent filmmakers that have just been trying to tell their stories and work in their art and get paid to do so. And when you go onto a movie set and you work on a set where you have a disparate group of people that come from all different walks of life, that have all different kinds of disciplines, and you get on a movie set, there's no place where you can see a bunch of people that can solve problems quicker, because they have to know how to work together. They have to know how to integrate all of their different disciplines, because a movie set is one of the only places in the world where every second literally has a quantifiable dollar value associated with it. And if you're not spending your time correctly, you don't get to be on a set. You're out.
Well, Gothix and I are going to have to come up with a way to market these new ideas so we can help save the country. I believe in her. Do you have anything you want to add about how you think this is, about how you think maybe we could move forward, just continuing doing what we're doing, or should we start addressing more of what you've been tackling on your own channel?
I mean, yes, I think that would be beneficial, but also like being cognizant of how we communicate with people too. Because, a lot of people who are on like the quote unquote right side of history, they're just so, I think they're just so fed up with the other side of the political aisle that they're not interested in building bridges. and from my perspective, if you're hoping to win hearts, it doesn't make any sense to keep pushing people away because you're fed up with the wokeness or whatever. You kind of got to, unfortunately, meet them where they are. I know people don't like that because, the left has been crazy. I get it. I used to be on the left, but just having the self-control to, communicate with people and see the humanity in one another instead of just like, I don't like you because of what you believe.
Well, I'm glad you.
God, I missed that. I got kicked out. You said, and then I disappeared. I missed that whole point. I love listening to your points.
Answers to the universe and beyond. So my other question for Gothix before we start wrapping this up was what Robert was sharing about the benevolence of people. Do you see that there is still that kindness, that humanity, that, again, benevolence in people on an individual basis more than in the group setting, like how Robert is hopeful?
I think humanity in general, human nature is bent towards evil, unfortunately. And I think that by and large, more often than not, people are more interested in themselves and what benefits them until it's like good for their situation. So I'm not saying that there's not people out there that want to lend a hand, but I find that more often it's just people out for themselves, unfortunately.
They want to put their hand in your pocket. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to show this last clip just so we can have a good laugh, and then we'll start wrapping up. I'm sure some of you have seen it. It was just funny the way it was put together, how Kamala plagiarized Kamala Khan. We got to come up with a great name. Kamala Khan, knee pads, Kamala, cackling Kamala. I called her high heels Kamala before, but.
And this is now copycat Kamala.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Copycat.
Because when I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips, people making tips.
Eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
What? Hospitality?
Hospitality.
That's a new word.
That's not a word.
That's not a word.
She's making shit up.
I also do want to share, because Anton had brought it up earlier. He was like talking about Kamala's website. So I'm going to bring up both of these. So we can see here Kamala's website and what she has on it versus Trump. So Kamala's is pretty simple. Donate, donate, donate. Let's get it. Anything else? Chip in, donate, take action. What's
else? Give me your money. Typical woman.
I mean, but this is really disappointing. It really is disappointing.
I still haven't had anyone answer me. What does let's win this mean? Because I don't know. Is
I
that
can maybe answer that.
Okay.
Because I happen to have a friend who is in U.S. intelligence.
Oh.
And what he opined to me about this very issue is that it's very deliberate that you don't know any of Kamala's positions just yet. There's two reasons for that. One is that they cannot run on any of the successes of the Biden administration, because if we're completely honest, they don't have any successes. The only successes the Biden administration has is making the 1%ers better off and bringing about the agenda of the World Economic Forum. That's their successes, and there's literally nothing else. That's difficult to run on. In terms of her positions, this is something that she has flip-flopped on a number of key issues several times. So what I was told is that right now they are sitting down, and she and, well, not she, but her advisors and the key people in the Democrat Party and the key donors are letting her know what her positions are on key issues. They are not in a hurry with making this public in any way, because as you've already seen, and this is what I was told, the priority right now is to fleece donors for as much money as humanly possible, while you still have like this honeymoon period where everyone is in this ecstatic bliss. Yeah, we're going to win. Everything is awesome. Vote blue, no matter who. That's kind of like what they're going for, trying to just create all of this artificial hype so that you will donate.
So basically do the Chicago Jesus thing from 2008, another Obama.
Yeah, kind of. And that's kind of like what they're going for. So they just want you to shell out as much money as humanly possible right now, because you hate Trump and because you want to save democracy. You know, that ridiculous lie right there, which is being repeated all over the world, which is truly the big lie.
It is a big lie.
And because of that, they're in no hurry to either let her do a live interview where she would be exposed really fast, or let her know her real positions, because the moment they are known, they're going to lose the progressive audience right away, because it's basically Biden 2.0, which was Obama 2.0 in time, so Obama 3.0.
So it's the third term of Obama, and if she wins, it'd be the fourth term. And adios.
This is what I was told.
Right. I believe you, Andre. You always have good insight. But here is now Trump's, right? So here we have Trump's, which again, contribute, shop, but wow, this little button here, platform. Okay, get your little ass. And there we have it. Goes all his policies, his basic ones: seal the border, stop the migrant invasion, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history, end inflation, make America the dominant energy producer in the world. And it goes on and on to have 20 basic positions. And when you click it, guess what? It breaks them down further.
There's no links to Project 2025.
No.
Imagine that.
Weird.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, I think this has been an amazing show. I'm going to read these 10 super chats, and then we will all sign off. I'll thank everybody. We'll go around the table. Mike, let's bring him up so we can thank our chat. Mike, he's somewhere in here. Okay. Well, I'll bring them up real quick. Where do we have this? We'll do Eric Case first. Eric K for $5. Oakland has the California CHP patrolling. That is not what they are designed for. Thank you, Eric K, for the $5. He's the king of the mods. We got Francisco Sanchez Jr. for $5. I remember when Nancy Pelosi had a salon opening during San Francisco's lockdown. Oh, yeah. What a bitch. Politicians are hypocrites, and so are most voters. Hard to stop that. Thank you, Francisco. Remember when she was showing off her ice cream? It was like she had the Sub-Zero, and she's like, we're all going to be fine. It was during the pandemic. And she's like, see, I got my ice cream. They're only $20 a gallon. But it reminded me of Mary Antoinette. Let them eat cake. We got Eric Helpfulfinger for $10. The right should reach out to the Harris campaign, then ask her questions like, why has unemployment gone up to 4.6% in a month while the chart is shown on screen? Come on, she avoided J.D. Vance when he went to Air Force One.
I was going to say, good luck getting any comment out of her that's off script.
Yeah, it's not going to happen with her. She's terrified. I mean, Trump keeps calling her out. It's like she won't do anything. It was, what was it, the National Association of Black Journalists that Trump went to a week and a half ago, where the first question out of the reporter's mouth was like, basically, how is it to be such a meanie Yahtzee Nazi like you? What kind of racist pig are you? Do you see? I mean, that was basically the crux of the question. And he's like, well, wait a minute. I thought I was here. Kamala was supposed to be here, but I showed up and y'all were. Yeah. Trump has guts. I don't know how anyone can doubt that. That's why, like Anton mentioned earlier, and also Joe mentioned, they memory hold that instantly after the attempted assassination attempt, because that was fire. I mean, that was a legend building. Fight. Yeah. And tomorrow night, remember, at 7 p.m., Elon Musk is going to be interviewing Trump. I believe it's going to break the internet. Donna Hergenrether, member for 7 months, completely love listening to informed people. Donna, you're one of my favorites. Always love it when you're here. We have Walter White Walker for $5. I'm a left-leaning independent. Left is not left anymore. We are dealing with guerrilla politics and voting. Bezmenov told us people won't believe facts. That is sad. True, but sad. But that's why, again, I think, as we've discovered on the panel, people are just going to have to go through some shit times, have their face in the mud with the choices that they made, only to wake up. You know, Bezmenov stated that one of the first things to happen after either a communist rule or communist dictatorship takes over, or Marxist collective forms, is the first thing they do is they whack all the people who support him, because they're the ones who believed in that utopian dream. They were the ones like, oh, right, paradise is coming. And when they realize it's not, they're like, they would be the worst rebel fighters. So it's crazy. Fantastic Mr. Knox for $2 Australian. Same policy Trump ran months prior. Correct. We got fantastic Mr. Knox for another Australian $2. Did you hear one of her policies is no tax on dips? Yeah, we just played that. It's, you know, Biden in 1988, when he was running his campaign for the presidency, the scandal that erupted was that he had plagiarized part of his speeches. That's why he had to get out of that. It's history just repeats. LeGarrette for $5. NFL stadiums are now going to be using facial recognition. I know, isn't that horrible? I saw that and I prayed that the article was a mistake. But the NFL showed an example that while they're playing the game, they can now zoom in on somebody and go, oh, that's Jody Smith, that's John Q, that's Bubba X. It's nuts. And Steel Leg of History. God bless you, my friend, for $2. Be blessed, everyone. I hope your channel is going great. And I think that about covers it all. Oh, we got one more. G8 Keeper for $10. I have to check out Gothix whenever I see her. Hail Riot and Robert Meyer Burnett. Wish you guys continued success and good health. Blessings to the Epic Angel. Blessings to you. Thank you for that. Oh, and we have, who's this? Good Wrench. Come on. I'm not good with these. Good Wrench. Good Wrench gifted 5 Georgia Giant Slammers. Thank you, Good Wrench. Please thank him. Please pick him up. And this has been a really fun show. I love you guys. This is amazing. I hope we all can come back together again. Please, starting with Anton, our featured guest, please let everybody know where they can find you.
I mean, you just put my name, Anton Daniels, into search, Google, YouTube, whatever, and it'll pop up, and multiple different channels, but pick one that you like, and then I'll redirect you once we get there. So
that's what happens when you're big like you. You just go, oh, just type Anton Daniels.
No, I figured out a way to, I don't know, I just use my regular name.
I like that.
Just use my regular name, and that's just how I roll. So
that's great. Andre?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First and foremost, always a pleasure to be here in such esteemed company with everyone else on the panel. You can find me over at Midnight's Edge and on X, on the name that you see right there on screen. Say it, but no one would understand it. So, yeah.
And it would be Gothix.
Thanks for having me again, guys. Lots of fun. You can find me on YouTube and on Twitter at Gothix TV.
Cool. Dante from Verbal Riot. You guys can find me on YouTube, Rumble, X, And yeah, I do my live show every Wednesday at 4 or 5, depending on what's going on. And yeah, that's it.
Wow, how often? You said how often do you do your live?
Every Wednesday.
Wow. Okay.
Between 4 and 5.
That's pretty good. That's pretty cool.
Tom, you?
Yeah, you can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark. I'll probably be heading over to Valiance after this, I believe.
Awesome. Good Logic and Robert Meyer Burnett.
Find me on YouTube at The Burnett Work, or find me on Twitter or X at RMB.
I'm Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. I'm a podcaster, a lawyer turned podcaster, talking law, politics, all this stuff now. Certainly very heavy, focusing on the political race. My podcasts 5 to 6 nights a week for 2 hours, and it's sort of like a little hangout that people come and chill as we talk about what's going on in the news. I urge you to check it out. Good Logic on YouTube, Good Logic on Rumble, and on Twitter, I'm at The Following Pro. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. Gothix, Anton, Tom, all of you. Thank you all for being here. Hope we can have you again. And remember, if you want to win every battle and stay true to yourself, all you have to do is remember that we never bow down and we never bend the knee. Please thank Eric K., the king of the mods, Mexican Ironman, our producer, Lord Thoth, and Flesher Williams. Have a blessed week. I will be back here tomorrow when Elon Musk breaks the internet. Have a blessed day, everybody.